Everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. That is Nick Wright. And was there a football move that wasn't made yesterday?
Oh my goodness! Free agency hadn't even officially begun.
I know. There's
and I feel
left.
like by 3 p.m. today, it's going to be over.
Passing out a lot of cash yesterday.
A lot of money.
A lot of money is going to be one of the themes of the show, CC. It is. You've been talking about a lot. The increased salary cap, nearly $180 million. There are some big deals being handed out to not necessarily top-line players throughout the league.
From the top of the league to the bottom, this league is profitable.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to see all levels of it, owners, commissioner's office, the players, they're all benefiting from it.
No kidding. There was a deal that was like $20 million. I was like, it was only $20 million. Come back to me when it's like $30 million.
Yeah, but it was a one-year deal.
It was a one-year deal. It was like a 6-month deal.
Yeah.
All right. To he who would argue there are no guarantees in life, I would argue he hasn't met Kirk Cousins. Cousins just got himself a whole bunch of guaranteed money, speaking of which, after months of speculation as to where he'd end up, the former Washington quarterback landed in Minnesota. Cousins reportedly will sign a 3-year, $84 million contract with the Vikings. Did I mention the money was fully guaranteed? This would make Cousins the highest-paid quarterback in the NFL. All right, we'll start with UCC. Did Cousins make the right call signing with the Vikings? Let's start from his perspective.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he went to the best team, top to bottom. Offense, defense, skilled guys, comfort level with the head coach. Yes, he went to an organization. The Vikings in the last 30 days, they just opened up an immaculate new practice facility in Eagan, Minnesota, right outside in one of the suburbs of Minnesota. We know from the stadium with the Super Bowl being there, great facilities that they have there. Zimmer, Rick Spielman, the general manager, the Will family, a family from New Jersey, like they have invested in this football team. Like they're trying to bring the first championship to the Twin Cities. So I felt like Kirk Cousins, the best team to go to, was going to be the Minnesota Vikings. My thing was there had to be a get-out price, and I think that was beyond the $28 million. And I had to have
What's a get-out price?
$30 million.
Where he's saying where the Vikings would tap out, a price where they would say, you know what, I'm out of the bidding.
It's too much.
It's a car auction, and you stop putting your razor out.
I can really live with the price that they're paying him per season and the amount of time that they're with. If you look at Kirk Cousins and his age, giving him a 3-year deal, given what the climate in the NFL as far as quarterbacks and some of the other important positions, yes, I believe this is the right price. I believe they did get him at the right deal, and he took some compromises. So he didn't go for the highest deal.
Right.
You know, because he could have gone to the Jets. The Jets, basically, he could have named his price there. So I like the fit. Minnesota, I believe they're doing a lot of the right things. And, I mean, this is a team that has been very, very close. As a quarterback, really helped them. If you're going to beat Aaron Rodgers, if you're going to beat them other teams in the NFC, you need a quarterback, and the Vikings have theirs.
And what the Vikings did, and where I give them credit and I give Cousins credit, because I think Cousins got the best of both worlds. He got the guaranteed deal, which I know we're going to get into. He got the ability to hit free agency again in 3 years, theoretically still at the tail end of his prime, but he also got the ability to compete for a championship right now. And that's what the Vikings were concerned about. We've discussed it, and it cannot go without mentioning that the offseason after this one, the Vikings are going to have some very difficult decisions to make. Some of their top-line players, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, Sharif Floyd, Stephon Diggs on the offensive side, all of those guys hit free agency. So next offseason, they're going to have tough decisions to make. But this offseason, they looked at their team and they said, with good quarterback play last year, what were we? A Super Bowl contender. We were a team that absolutely had the argument going into the playoffs. We're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league. And coming out of the playoffs, could have argued we were one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league. They were not confident, and I don't blame them, that Case Keenum was going to be able to duplicate the year he had in 2017 in 2018. So they took what Case did last year, about a 98 quarterback rating, 22 touchdowns, 7 picks, about 67% completions, and found a quarterback who that has been essentially his average year since he was a starter, a guy who has repeatedly duplicated that process. They don't need, CeCe brought up a good point yesterday with Coach Mangini. They don't necessarily need far superior quarterback play than they got last year. What they can't have is a huge drop off from where they were last year. They're confident with Kirk Cousins, he will be able to duplicate, if not improve upon, what Case Keenum did last season.
So if they're going to pay him all this money, sacrificing what could be a number of components to this team in the next year, 2, 3 years, they assume they're going to be one of the best teams in the league next year. Do you agree? Is this now the best team in the league with Kirk Cousins and this Minnesota Vikings team?
I'm not gonna go there as far as are they better than Philadelphia, because what if I say yeah? What difference does it make? What if I say no? It don't make no difference. Philadelphia are the Super Bowl champs, and they did that with the backup quarterback. Is Kirk Cousins better than Carson Wentz? Absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. But this team is a good team, and I believe that if Minnesota had home field advantage last year, they would have been in the Super Bowl. But that game, the NFC Championship, Nick, we were there in Philadelphia. They jumped. Now, they played well. They jumped all over them. But having that fan support led to them winning Super Bowl 52. So Kirk Cousins makes them a better football team. He is a better quarterback than Case Keenum, I believe, will ever be in the NFL.
And just to answer your question, while I do think that if Kirk Cousins is as good as he was at his best in Washington, I do think that would probably make the Vikings the best team in the league. But Cece's point is correct. It is not about going into the season who the best team is. It is about, do you have a credible case that you are one of the best teams, one of the teams that has a good shot, not a miracle shot to win the Super Bowl. And when we look at it now from 10,000 feet, the Vikings are on the list, along with Philadelphia, along with New England, along with Pittsburgh, as that top of the top tier of the league going into the 2018 season. Now, there's always teams that surprise us. I don't think Philadelphia was in that top tier going into 2017. But they have made it so they can continue the trajectory on which they were on, the trajectory they got on, I feel like, when they hired their head coach, Mike Zimmer.
Right. Also, I don't know why people are so shocked with the economics that are going on in the NFL. Nick, in the last 2 years, how much money has Kirk Cousins made?
In the last 2 years?
Yes.
What's he made? $45 million, $47 million?
Okay, so how much? 22.5 a year?
What? Yeah, just around 22.5 a year.
He's getting 28 now, and what we consider now a 3-year deal in the NFL is a long-term deal. So going from 22 to 23 million to 28 million, that's not a huge jump in total free agency, where you can go to any team. So I believe the Vikings did get him at the right price. People just have to get used to. These are the economics that are going on in the NFL now. And I think that adjust your eye. I mean, we saw last year in free agency, well, Mike Glennon came from Tampa Bay to Chicago for $16 million. You know, and he's not even a starter. Sam Bradford, 1-year deal, going to Arizona for $20 million. So, man, getting Kirk Cousins at 28, like, yes, I believe that is the right price for the Vikings.
The economics, it wasn't just about the per-year price. It was about what I know you're going to get into, which is the
impact, the larger impact.
Well, and that it's a fully guaranteed deal.
Right. Which is what you've been saying all along.
This is the reason I think people were taken aback somewhat by Kirk Cousins is the Vikings and Kirk did something that I've been encouraging, this along with one of my theories you love so much, along with front-loading deals, like something that I thought could be trend-setting to a degree. Now, I didn't see it to where the player would get, to use a cliche, his cake and eat it too, top-end money and a fully guaranteed deal. I thought there might be a team that would go to a guy such as Russell Wilson when his rookie deal was up, say, hey, you're on pace at the time to make $22 million a year. We'll give you $18 million a year, but we will guarantee every single year of it. For Kirk Cousins to get a fully guaranteed deal, and this is a key point that I don't want people to forget or Vikings fans to forget, the franchise tag, how you can only be franchise tagged 3 times ever, and it gets increasingly onerous each year, that carries over from team to team. So Kirk Cousins cannot effectively ever be franchise tagged again. And so when he gets 3 years, fully guaranteed to get all his money, he also knows if I play well, if I play the way I've played over the last 3 years, I get to be a free agent all over again, a true free agent all over again without the franchise tag looming over me. I think that's what struck people was, and that's why players across the league were saying, NFL players, tell me if I'm wrong, have always envied to a degree the guaranteed portion of basketball and baseball contracts, right?
Yeah, they have, but it's not fair to compare because if you look at the numbers,
of course,
how many players are in the NFL is almost the same number of players in Major League Baseball, in the National Hockey League, and in the NBA by 300 players.
Right.
So you can't compare something in a collision sport compared to only having a roster of 12 to 15 guys. So NFL players, it's unrealistic to ever think that they could be the same.
Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
No. Of course, like it never. But guys still did it. Guys would still wonder why, even if the numbers couldn't be the same, why can their contracts be guaranteed and ours can't? And Kirk's the first one, the first significant high-dollar contract I've ever seen where it is fully guaranteed for the 3 years, and that's why you saw players across the league speaking about it.
And for people who wonder whether Kirk Cousins is worth it and what did he do in Washington, they never really. Well, now he's got people to throw to, and he's got the Adam Thielens and the Stephon Diggs, and now you can see what he can do with an offense that's already set in place. So maybe the numbers he had in Washington carry over to success.
Listen, this is what he's got. He's got a defense that can win him games, too.
Sure.
So it's not as if the Vikings were absent of a quarterback. Like, oh, Kirk Cousins is coming to say, no, this is a good football team. When you look through the roster, and now it can be stabilized with just steady, good quarterback play, and that's what I think Kirk brings to them.
Such a good football team. I know they made a conference championship with Brett Favre. But this, on paper, I believe, is the best Vikings team since you were playing. I think going into a season, this is the most complete, most potentially lack of holes Vikings team that we've seen since you were playing in the late 90s and early 2000s. At least that's how I look at it.
New topic here. You have to wonder if this was the Jets' plan B all along. Plan A, Kirk Cousins. Plan B, quickly scramble, sign the guy you had last season who wasn't amazing, and go after someone who played just a few minutes all last season. We're comfortable with that, guys. Let's break it down. So Jets re-signed soon-to-be 39-year-old Josh McCown to a one-year, $10 million deal. Then they will reportedly sign Teddy Bridgewater from Minnesota, also to a one-year deal. Cece, what do you make of the Jets' quarterback plans?
I mean, the Jets were bragging about how they had $100 million available. Like, you would think.
Now they've got like $98 million available.
I mean, how do you improve your football team? Like, you got to go out and spend the money. And you got to spend it on guys who can play. And I can understand even reaching for some guys that you could take a chance on. I can understand them signing Teddy Bridgewater. But I don't know why they signed Josh McCown. Like, I really don't. Like, does he make the quarterback room better? Like, at 39? Like, he's never been good, even when he was young. Like, we think he's going to be better when he's old? Like, so for me, I think the Jets, there's a reason why certain teams win, and there's a reason why certain teams lose. And I just wish they would give Todd Bowles the type of support that it takes to be a winning coach in this league. You need playmakers, all right? And you need a decision maker at quarterback. He's touching the ball every snap that is a playmaker. So I like the chance they took on Teddy Bridgewater as far as one-year deal there. That is what Teddy should get, coming off being out of football for 2 years. I like that. Their ability, they can still draft one of the top 3 quarterbacks at the number 6 position. Yes, that should be a good thing, but that's at the end of April. We're in free agency right now, and that money's no good. You can't carry that money over to next year. So they need to spend and be spending more. If they're going to ever get out of the basement in the AFC East, you cannot continue to make decisions and get just average football players. You need some great football players, and I didn't see them going out doing that.
And I now believe they are not drafting a quarterback at number 6. Because if you think about, if you're paying Josh McCown 10, let's say Teddy's going to make, we don't know the details, but I would imagine 8 to 10. Let's call him the low end. Let's say it's $8 million.
Well, I don't believe both of those guys might be on the roster. One of those guys is going to get cut.
Okay, so if they end up cutting one of them, fair enough. Like, because if you were to keep all 3, keep those 2 and draft a guy, the guy you draft is going to make at number 6 about $6 million a year. Then you'd be paying $24 million a year for without having a great quarterback. Like, I understand what they did with Teddy Bridgewater. I think the Teddy Bridgewater thing is smart, actually. I don't understand them signing McCown, reportedly telling McCown he's the starter when they get him to sign there. Like, at the very least, Teddy should be competing for that. We know Teddy's upside's higher. I think Teddy's, if he's healthy, his basement's higher as well. But the McCown thing is perplexing. And while I understand from all his teammates' accounts, he's a great teammate, he's a good locker room guy, I get all of that. But when I saw Josh McCown get 1 year, $10 million at age 38, you know what I thought about? How patently absurd it is that folks are telling me Lamar Jackson should go try to be a wide receiver. Why not? Go be Josh McCown. Let's say he can't be a starter in this league. Play 15 years as a backup, never be good,
one of the problems
and make $40 million.
One of the problems with a guy like Lamar Jackson, we haven't seen guys who have been stars who can bring value to the quarterback room enough that they would stay in the circuit, stay in the system long enough that they could be backups like this. Typically, organizations, they like older guys who are like gym rats who can actually be like coaches inside the meeting room to be able to help whoever the starter is. And we just haven't seen that transition. I believe that he deserves that opportunity.
Right.
You know, but to be able to stay within the system when you're used to being a star and now you are a backup, the things that probably made you a star, your athletic ability, is not something that the team is going to be able to utilize compared to your brain power and be able to help out the guy who is the starter. I look at a guy like Teddy Bridgewater with the X's and O's and how he plays the game. He would be a guy that would be in that category, but we just haven't seen a lot. Michael Vick, he showed that he can do that late in his career, be a backup and have that example. But it's hard when you are a star, you're a Heisman Trophy, the whole franchise, the whole college, you're the big man on campus, to take that back seat and be a practice squad, only do scout team, do whatever the coaches need you to do. Everyone is not cut out for that.
Go ahead, Jenna.
I don't get back to the Jets. If you're a Jets fan and you're looking at what they did now, so now you have maybe two guys who could potentially be competing. You said they have all this money, they should have gone out and get some. Is there someone out there that you think they should have gotten or they could have gotten? I felt like everyone kind of landed, the big top free agents landed where they were going to land. Jets were left on the outside looking in.
Well, they're like the Browns. Teams don't want to go there. Guys want to win. Like, there's a certain point where money compared to winning, all right? And Kirk Cousins, amongst others, Case Keenum, they didn't want to go there. They went to the better teams. Case went to Denver, and Kurt chose Minnesota. So winning plays a part in trying to attract people, regardless of how much money. Almost every team has money. So it's not like the Jets are the
best they could.
But it's not just. But here's the thing, CC.
Well, we got to get beyond the best they can. Like, they haven't won in 40 years.
And we focus on the quarterbacks, but what about Andrew Norwell? Could he have helped the Jets, a first-team All-Pro guard, when they got all this money? They don't have a great offensive line. But he wants to go to a place that all of a sudden, amazingly...
I know they could have used a bunch of those wide receivers.
Absolutely right. That's why Allen Robinson, Sammy Watkins. Sometimes you do have to pay a premium. And because you're the Jets and you have this cap space open this year, you could, instead of backloading, you could do a even split over 3 years or front-load a deal slightly. But the way you're going to create to where we saw Jacksonville all of a sudden turn it around quickly. They drafted smartly. They made two key free agent acquisitions last year, A.J. Bouye and Calais Campbell. People thought they might have overpaid for those guys. It helped them. For the Jets to come out of here with Teddy and McCown and no other significant players, I don't understand how it happens.
Well, we still have time.
Yeah,
they could still do stuff. A lot of people have been and landed places. But
of the top 50 free agents, 22 of them are off the market.
Right.
Despite a brief flirtation with the Vikings, Drew Brees agreed to a 2-year deal with the Saints yesterday. We all sort of assumed this would happen. The deal will give Brees $50 million, $27 million guaranteed. CeCe, are you surprised that Brees took such a short deal?
No, he's 39 years old. He's at the end of his career. They also have some things as far as ownership, there with the family. Like, how long will they own the football team? I think Drew Brees, at this point, he's playing year to year. This is a 1-year deal for $27 million. The team has the option on the second year. I'm sure if Drew continues to play at this level, he stays healthy, I'm sure they exercise the option for year number 2. But I like the fact that he stayed there in New Orleans. Sometime during the season, I know he's got less than 2,000 yards. He's going to pass Peyton Manning as the all-time passer in the National Football League. Yes, I did send out a tweet with Drew Brees because the Vikings called. Yeah. But in all honesty, we need to see Drew Brees, when he breaks that record, he needs to have a Saints uniform on. He's the greatest Saints player in the history of that franchise. The lone Super Bowl they have is because of Drew Brees. He changed the culture there. They took a chance on a small, undersized guy who was not a prolific passer in San Diego when he came there. They took a chance on him, and, man, they built magic together. I'm glad to see him going back to New Orleans because also they're one of the teams that you're going to have to deal with with in the NFC.
Yes.
They took a chance on him also, CC, coming off a major injury. An injury that made Miami
Well, that was the only chance.
Well,
I mean,
correct. But he was not, when he went, even absent the injury, he, like you mentioned, he was not Drew Brees, the way we think of him now, leaving San Diego. He was a good quarterback available. The same offseason, Dante Culpepper was available. It looked like he was going to go to Miami. Miami's doctors don't clear him. They go with Dante. Nick Saban goes with Dante. And, the rest is a sliding doors moment in NFL history. As far as Brees, he is supposed to be a Saint. And the Saints knew that he felt he was supposed to be a Saint. And I think he probably could have squeezed a few more dollars out of this. But what Brees knows is this. While he's not going to play for free, and $27 million is a lot of money, he also knows the only reason Drew Brees is not, because you mentioned it, he's going to throw for more yards than any player in the history of the league. The only reason when we talk about the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, the truly top 5 guys of all time, that Brees is in that next tier down, is because he only has the one championship. Like, Drew Brees knows this team is good enough to compete for a title. He knows that if he were to squeeze every last dollar out of this, it might hurt their ability to compete for a title. And if all of a sudden Drew Brees becomes 2-time Super Bowl champion Drew Brees, you start looking at him versus John Elway. You start looking at him versus Steve Young. You start looking at him versus some other guys differently than you probably do right now.
And plus, unlike other teams right now in the NFC, which they need a lot of help and a lot of holes to plug, the Saints did really well last year. So bringing Brees back, they can kind of pick up where they left off.
No, they had no choice. They had no plan B or plan C. It was to sign Drew Brees.
Right.
The contract language was a little bit difficult, but they got it done.
All right, Packers made news yesterday saying goodbye to Jordy Nelson, who had been there since 2008, and hello to Jimmy Graham, who had spent the last 3 seasons catching passes from Russell Wilson out in Seattle. Jimmy for Jordy. Nick, are the Packers surrounding Aaron Rodgers with enough talent?
Listen, I think they got marginally better with this move. If you can, I know it's not a trade, but if you just consider it, they basically took money that could have been allocated to Jordy Nelson, gave it to Jimmy Graham. I think Jimmy Graham right now at this stage of his career is slightly better than Jordy Nelson. I don't think Jordy Nelson has been the same player, the perennial Pro Bowler that we saw pre-ACL, post-ACL. You've seen his yards per catch go from 15 and above for 4 straight seasons, to 13, and then last year less than 10. Part of that, of course, is Aaron Rodgers wasn't out there, but he's not as explosive as he once was. But Jimmy Graham also hasn't been the dominant force he was in New Orleans in a few years now. He's still a very good red zone threat. He's still a guy that can go up and get the jump balls. But when you saw him dominating in New Orleans, CeCe, he averaged 138 targets per year. They were feeding him the football. They stopped feeding him to that level in Seattle, and you saw the production drop dramatically to where he only had 1 season in Seattle of more than 600 yards receiving. So I think they got marginally better. I don't think they got much better, and I'm very curious how Aaron Rodgers feels about this.
Like I tell you all the time, there are a lot of players that are system players. The way Jimmy Graham was able to do that is because of Sean Payton. Now, Sean Payton's productivity has not gone down as a play caller. He's one of the best that I've ever seen, and Jimmy Graham was a product of that. But as a player, Jimmy Graham thought it was him, not the system. So then he went to Seattle in their passing system, not as sophisticated. It is not a mismatch-based offense. Sean Payton is looking for the mismatch in the defense. What is the soft spot? What guy can I have dominate? And we see Green Bay do this with Mike McCarthy. I believe that he will utilize Jimmy Graham. We'll see Jimmy Graham be more utilized in the passing game, in the field, compared to just being a red zone wide receiver. And the Jordy Nelson puzzle, I'm not puzzled by it, because last year when they signed Devontae Adams, the last week of the season, they signed him to an extension. Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson, one of them got to go. Now, Jordy Nelson is the older of the two and had a higher cap number, so he was the one who got it. Now, I thought that they would go to Jordy the way Green Bay has done in the past and ask him, do you want to take a reduction in salary? And Jordy could have stayed there, and then they still would have had a problem adding Jimmy Graham. But I'm not surprised, because they made it a priority to give Devontae Adams that new contract. So they named him the #1 wide receiver when they gave him #1 money.
You brought up, I wonder how Aaron Rodgers feels, which is interesting because Aaron Rodgers Rivers has tweeted in the last 24 hours his support for Jordy Nelson. He has tweeted and expressed a little remorse over social media that he was leaving. Remember last year, they ended up getting rid of his quarterbacks coach basically without telling him, and then this happens. You wonder how much dialogue they are actually having with their star on their team about some of the moves they're making.
I know it's not done this way in the NFL, but if there's any player in the league that deserves a NBA-esque LeBron level of deference from his front office, from we're going to run some things by you, it's Aaron Rodgers. Teams don't do this in the NFL. I get it. But Aaron Rodgers, you saw them last year. Super Bowl contender. One of the best teams in the league. He gets hurt. Their season falls apart. And you saw in what Aaron was tweeting, also the tweets he was liking, as far as, yeah, this was his guy. We saw him, I think we have a video, we saw him in the press conference after the NFC Championship game against Atlanta, talking about Jordy playing with broken ribs in that game. If you remember how emotional he was talking about Jordy Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so proud of Jordy. I mean, it's incredible that he was out there. Yeah.
I mean, that's his guy. And so it's a cold business. But given the Alex Van Pelt situation, as CeCe grabs a handkerchief, I wonder how this lands with him. Is that not of concern to you, Chris?
Man, it got zero concern, man. All right? You're here to play football, not to pick the players. And what player have we seen that we can give the credibility to think that they know as much as the football people? When you give players the power to pick, you get into players picking from their emotion. And players don't know what's best from a salary cap scheme. Their focus is very, very narrow. So, no, Aaron Rodgers, throw the ball. You're not going to pick the players. What we'll let you do is there's a possibility we're going to cut Jordy Nelson. All right? We need the salary cap space. That's how I would run it past him. It wouldn't be. I don't care what your opinion is.
But didn't Tom Brady have an opinion onto whether Jimmy Garoppolo should stay or not?
No, they didn't have no opinion. They didn't have no opinion. New England didn't care what he thought. There was rumor that he had an opinion, an adverse opinion, privately. But it wasn't like the club went to him and said, hey, what do you think about Jimmy Garoppolo? No.
No, he went to the club.
We can't confirm that.
You're right. We can't.
We can't confirm that.
But you said going to him at the very least and giving him the courtesy heads up. That's something they didn't do with the quarterbacks coach. This is a guy like he is, I think we would agree, one of, if not the singular most important player to his franchise in the league.
What? Well, you think he knows what's best for them cap-wise?
No, I'm not saying that you have to ask his permission. But I am saying...
I just disagree.
No, of course.
All right? But I got him here to play football. I don't have him here to pick the players. All right?
Do you think what you said they should have done? Like, my question is, did they do that? And if not, because they didn't do that with the quarterbacks coach.
This is the thing. You walk a thin line in allowing people to participate in the decision-making. And when you get into that with players, you get into the emotion of it. And when you get into your emotions, are you going to pick the best player that's going forward at the right salary? All right? Now, when they had Brett Favre, they didn't go over personnel with Brett Favre. Now, I don't know why they should be going over personnel with Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, or anyone else in the league. I believe that they have people that are more equipped to do that than the players, including Aaron Rodgers.
Welcome back to First Things First. NBA champ Steven Jackson is with us. Always a good time.
I think it's fair to say, not to speak for Chris, because that can be a dangerous thing to do, but I'm going to speak for you right now. On behalf of all three of us, even though this is only your third day ever with us, you're already one of our favorite guests we've ever had. Thank you.
Hey, man, give him that on the way out the door. We ain't even done nothing today. Man, I'll give you something on the way out the door. Do some work first.
I appreciate it, though.
Do some work first.
I'm ready.
Good point. Good point, CeCe. My bad.
All right,
he might sit down on the curb on it.
Waiting on the ride.
3 flat tires. Okay. Steven, let's talk some Russell Westbrook here. Last night, 32 points, 12 rebounds, 12 assists in a win over the Hawks. It was the 100th triple-double of his career. He joins Oscar Robinson, Magic Johnson, and Jay Kidd as the only members of the 100 triple-double club. But, Steven, based on the way he plays, what you've seen from what he's done with this team compared to last year, with the new additions on this team, and yet where they are, would you want to play with Russell Westbrook?
I'm one of those guys, go hard or go home. I'm one of those guys that broken toe, anything that I've dealt with, I played. And I played hard, gave everything I have. You would never hear me say anything bad about Russell Westbrook because he shows every night how much he loves the game. I would love to play with a guy like Russ. Anytime you got a guy that stuffs the stat sheet, that does everything for your team, how can you go against it? You can't blame him. I think you need to blame those other guys on their team. They need to pick their energy level up. They need to play with more passion and show that they care about the game like Russ do. And their team might be better, but when you have a guy like Russ, you got to hold on to him because that passion you can't teach.
See, what you touched on, that is the best explanation as to why I love Russ. I'm an analytics guy, I'm a numbers guy, and the analytics don't love Russell Westbrook.
At all.
The analytics talk about his inefficiency as a shooter. He is approaching Charles Barkley levels of volume three-point shooting without success at it. The analytics say a lot of those rebounds that got him the triple-double were hollow rebounds off missed free throws. And I understand those numbers, and I appreciate those numbers. But the reason I love Russ is what you touched on. I said this last year, I'll say it again. If you have a kid that plays sports, you know who of all athletes across all sports you should point to and say, that's how you should play, that's how much you should care, that's how hard you should go every single night. Russell Westbrook. Last year, when the biggest problem with the NBA last season was the resting. Was all of a sudden LeBron's not playing on a nationally televised game. The Warriors and Spurs are resting all their star players on a big Sunday or Saturday night ABC game. Guess who was not resting for a possession?
Russ.
That guy. And what you're saying is, for the right type of teammates, it's inspirational. For the right type of teammates, it should make them go even harder. It's one of the reasons I love him. I understand his limitations as a player, but watching him as a fan, it's exhilarating to me.
When I look at the question, I have to ask myself, as a player that played with a bunch of different players, well, what kind of player wouldn't I like to play with? Well, one who's not consistent, one who's lazy, one who doesn't care about the game, and one who's not a self-starter. Like, I don't like to play with guys got to be motivated by the coach.
Right.
I want a guy that shows up to work regardless of how your body's feeling. Like, you can predict the type of energy that's going to come out of him. Because the reason I like that is because, man, you don't always have your A game. You don't always have the energy that you need to be able to do this type of job. So to have someone like that, so there can be for me, it would be a push-pull effect. Because I would be able to push him on almost every day. In those days I couldn't push him, he would be pushing me. So I would try to figure out how I would be able to surround my game around his game. I realize also the story of Russell Westbrook. This is not one of the guys that, okay, this guy was a five-star talent in high school. Man, UCLA did not want him. But most of the college coaches did not want him. He made himself into the basketball player. Now, he hit a growth spurt. But his overall tenacity to be in the gym, to work on his game. See, I don't think people know who Russ really is and what he came from to get to where he is. They just think, oh, KD, he's talented. Oh, Steph. Steph developed his game, too. Russell developed his game as much as any player in the NBA. So that much I do love, and that I can embrace and play with.
So why isn't this team considerably better than they were last year with the additions they made? And I know you said the other guys need to pick up the energy, but does Russ not need to adjust his game at all, in your opinion? Is there something to maybe figuring out a way, when your numbers are basically the same, getting the other guys into it? Because if it's not working the way you're doing it, maybe as the team leader, you adjust the way you're doing it?
Well, it's hard to point the finger at Russ, you know, when he's doing everything and you're paying guys like Roberson $80 million and he's getting hacker-shacked.
Right.
Whenever you ever been in a situation where you have a small forward getting hacker-shacked that can't make a free throws. So you putting Russ in a tough position. Losing KD is a tough position. You know, you're trying to add guys to replace KD. That's kind of impossible. I think Paul George, this is his first year. I think he needs a little bit more time there. He's a great player, but you can't put it on Russ, like I said, when you giving $80 million to a guy that's a small forward that can't make free throws.
Here's the thing, though, because I know you like Paul George's game because we've never talked about Paul George, but he plays both ends. He plays both ends at a very high level. I know that's your style of ball. I know you like his game. Steven Adams, in a league that didn't have a lot of really good centers.
My favorite player.
Well, I didn't know that, but Steven Adams really. So why aren't they better? Because it's not just because they gave Roberson that money. Because I know he can't hit free throws, but he was maybe going to be Defensive Player of the Year before he got hurt. Like, he does add some value. Why, in your eyes, why aren't they better? And does it say anything to you that Victor Oladipo looked like one thing in Oklahoma City and has looked like something totally different in Indiana?
Well, I think his light in OKC was green. His light in Indiana is lime green.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
He can shoot way more. His game is free-flowing.
He's got the ball more.
It's a different feeling. It's a different feeling. They're not winning because it's kind of like the Jordan thing or kind of like the Shaq thing. When you trade a guy like KD or when you lose a guy like KD, it's going to take a while to get back. We're talking about KD now, arguably the best player in the league. So when you lose a guy like that, it's kind of hard. But I think for the most part, to applaud Russ, he's been doing a great job. He's been just sticking to his guns and being a professional and going out there and play basketball regardless who they bring. Now, he has some help now. I still think if they can get into the playoffs, they can do some damage.
At this point in his career, though, for me, I'm about trying to improve my game. I would look at the worst parts of my game, and that would be his three-point shooting. I love the energy and everything, but at some point, you have to look at the numbers and wonder, I need to work more at the weakest part of my game. Right. And so that part right there, I believe that Russ can improve on. At this stage of his career, he should be a better three-point shooter or take less three-point shots. Now, that's an adjustment that Russ needs to continue. If you look at the greatest players, they're still adjusting. Steph is adjusting. KD, we saw him adjusting. LeBron, year 15, he's adjusting. Russ is not adjusting. So that's the thing that you can hold against him. The players who come there with him, they have to adjust to Russ's play. And I just believe as a superstar, he should have more flexibility and be able to do more different things and be able to shoot the ball better.
Finally, 10-time Pro Bowler Joe Thomas called it a career yesterday after 11 seasons, protecting 21 different Cleveland quarterbacks and playing over 10,000 consecutive snaps. Thomas decided to retire. He didn't get all the headlines with the Browns, but CeCe, just how great was Joe Thomas?
Unbelievable football player. And it's hard to play football and not be rewarded for it. When people say, well, you're a professional, you're being paid. Well, you get paid to win in the NFL. That's the philosophy that coaches tell you. No, anybody can just get paid, but you get paid to win. In 11 years, because he's just as good as one of my classmates that went into the Hall of Fame, Jonathan Ogden. Ogden was the first pick in Baltimore, and after that, their left tackle problems were over with until he was the first selection in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Joe Thomas is the same type of player without the championships, without the prime time. This is a guy. How bad was it for him? He never started the season 1-0 in 11 years there.
That's crazy.
He never started 1-0. So he will never get the type of praise that was well deserved for him. The quarterback play, a guy who never got help. All those consecutive snaps that they say is a record, like it's off the charts. We've never seen anyone do it. We say he has the record because no one that we can compare it to.
We weren't even counting them before. We didn't know.
A great player, a great guy that had the type of attitude with a franchise and a city that I don't believe that you will be able to duplicate, because you cannot lose at football and for a guy to be as positive as Joe was for so many years, trying to get guys to come to Cleveland, dealing with so much chaos on and off the field, like truly one of the greats that will not be able to get the type of attention, because this is a game that we give all the attention to the teams that win or the teams that are in the big market. And Joe was not one of those, but what a great story. From draft day, where the NFL invited him to the draft, he said, no, I'm going fishing with my dad. That was my first time really studying Joe Thomas, was that day, and the way he went out without any fanfare. Joe Thomas, much respect to him.
He is a no-doubt Hall of Famer. One of the best writers about offensive line play is a guy named Robert Mays. He writes for The Ringer. And he pointed this out yesterday, and I think it's a really smart point. You look at Joe Thomas's draft class. Adrian Peterson's in that class. Calvin Johnson's in that class. Patrick Willis is in that class. Darrelle Revis is in that class. You can argue. Now it's an argument, but you can argue he was the best player in that draft class. With 4 other, no doubt to me, Hall of Fame, All-Pro, amazing players. Guys that were at the top of their position for an extended stretch of time at their respective positions in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he's in a class of only 3 players that made the Pro Bowl their first 10 years in the league. I think that is Lawrence Taylor, and Barry Sanders, and Joe Thomas. Like those 3 guys, the only 3 guys, the first 10 years in the league, they made the Pro Bowl.
And the Pro Bowl, I know some people are like, yeah, the Pro Bowl sometimes is legacy. Not for him.
Okay, well, make one.
Right, no, exactly right.
That's not people who made them.
Okay, sure.
That's people who writing about it.
Fair enough.
All right? Now, I made 8 of them.
No, I get it.
And typically, they make you sit out a year or 2. all right, before you get that reputation to be able to get in the Pro Bowl.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that when people knock the Pro Bowl, they knock it on the back end of it. To start your career as a Pro Bowler, when you have no reputation coming in, 9-time first-team All-Pro.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the cream of the creme de la creme of it. Like, you can't, I know it's boring to talk about line play. I know it's boring to talk about the Browns. I get it. But this guy is one of the great players of a generation. And to go I believe it was 10,363 snaps in a row without coming off the field. And then when he did come off the field, never went back on it. That is an amazing career for an amazing player.
I didn't know you spoke French.
Oh,
So
yeah, absolutely.
Say it again.
One of my many talents. Creme de la creme.
Creme de la creme. To the
I got
NFL
you,
draft, though, now, I don't even speak
I didn't know
English.
you spoke English.
He may only be 5 inches taller than I am, but tall is overrated, said Napoleon. Baker Mayfield wowed the people at Oklahoma's Pro Day yesterday. All 32 teams had representatives there to watch the Heisman winner throw. Not surprisingly, Mayfield did not lack confidence about his performance. Take a listen.
I feel like I've put myself in a good spot here to, be considered the best quarterback in the draft. No matter the height question or people, question the character. I think these meetings have been great for me. So, put myself in a good spot, and it's kind of interesting to think about. Before the season, they had me at a 3rd to 4th round grade, and now it's improved a little bit.
So, what do you think Baker Mayfield has to do to be truly, truly successful in the NFL?
And you got to go to the right team. He's got to get the right fit. You got to have some playmakers around him, but you also have to protect him. Being 6 foot in the NFL, we just haven't seen players have success at that. Why? The reason why Baker, I believe he can be successful, when you watch his throwing motion, he has his elbow high. When you're shorter, if you have your elbow low, it tends to make the ball sail because you're throwing over. There's no one on his offensive line that will be his height. Everyone will be at least 2 inches taller, and as you get to the end of the line, those guys are 5 to 6 inches taller. So when you don't have a high throwing motion, that will affect you. The reason why Drew Brees has been successful, because he has the same type of throwing motion that Baker Mayfield, where he has his elbow up and he's able to be accurate. So then the size is not as important, but you cannot go anywhere in this league as a quarterback and not be supported. The Pro Day, this is what I expect from a Pro Day. It's the easiest thing. It's one of the easiest things for a guy coming out of college after going to the combine. The reason why? Because the Pro Day is scripted. He knows exactly how many throws he's going to make. He knows where he's throwing them to. Everything is diagrammed by him and the coaches before he gets there, and he's throwing the guys that he's familiar with. There's guys that typically have played at Oklahoma with Baker Mayfield, so that's the reason why they're part of the Pro Day. So I'm not surprised that he did well at his Pro Day. I believe he's going to be a star in the NFL because I believe in his leadership. I don't know anyone that's good in the NFL and don't think that they're good. And I need you to know that you're good in the NFL because there's going to be some days where you're going to get dominated by people. And if you don't have the confidence to know that you're good and know that you're playing at this level and can play at this level, the league will eat you up. And we have seen great players lose their confidence. Blaine Gabbert. Guys get hit early. Carr, who got drafted there.
David Carr, man.
You have to know that you belong in the league, and I believe that Baker Mayfield, that's the type of attitude that is more prevalent in the NFL. Now, coming in, getting drafted, everybody wants you to be humble, but that's stupid. You're going into a locker room of guys that got nothing but confidence. I believe the hardest profession to play. I believe Baker Mayfield's personality fits right into an NFL locker room.
And it is earned confidence. This guy had arguably, from a quarterback perspective, the best 2-year run in modern college football history, statistically. He was playing in one of the toughest conferences, not necessarily to compile stats, but to get wins. They consistently won. And his point of, listen, I was a walk-on. I then was a transfer. I then was, after being a 2-time Heisman finalist, was projected.
Walked on twice, though.
Walked on, correct. You're right. Walked on twice. Then, after being a 2-time Heisman finalist, what do the draftniks say? 3rd, 4th round pick. Go out and win the Heisman, put together, break your own record for college efficiency. And if you look at what he did, if you just deep dive into the numbers, okay, he had the highest passer rating in college football when blitzed. Also the highest passer rating when not blitzed. He had the highest rating in a clean pocket. Also the highest rating when he's pressured. Like, there are no, and when you talk about the mechanics, I can't break them down like you. I don't really understand it, but I know what I'm seeing. It seems like he has the ability, what the announcers always say, changing the arm angle if he needs to. If he's running, he seems to have the ability, not out of laziness, but out of this throw, I have to do a little bit differently.
Yes.
Which you're going to have to do at his size at times in the NFL. There are two reasons he is not the consensus number one pick of this draft. And it's not because of Sam Darnold. It's not because of Josh Rosen. It is because of his height and his conference. Like, those are the two reasons. Now, the big knock on the Big 12, let's see how Pat Mahomes does. Let's see how Baker Mayfield does. I know Case Keenum was not in the Big 12, but it was similar stylistically at U of H. See what his career renaissance looks like. Maybe that stereotype, if you will go away from the conference. And if he's successful at his height, and we have, Drew Brees, top 6 quarterback. Russell Wilson's a top 6 quarterback.
Did you have the same questions when these two guys were coming out?
There's a reason why, yeah, absolutely. Height will always be a matter in the National Football League. Height, strength, and speed. The guy who don't think height's important is the guy that's short. The guy that don't think speed's important is the guy that's slow. The guy that don't think strength's important is the guy that's weak. All these things are critical components, but you have to leave your eye open for an outlier. That's who Drew Brees is. That's who Russell Wilson is. And their draft status was affected because of their height.
Drew Brees was second-round pick out of a big school, Purdue. They didn't have the conference questions there. Russell Wilson was successful.
After a tremendous career at Purdue.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson was successful at 2 big-time colleges, NC State and Wisconsin. In 2 conferences we're not worried about. He fell to the 3rd round. It was all about height.
Could Baker Mayfield be that outlier?
No, he is. He's going to be a star in the NFL.
You heard it here first. Coming up, Kevin Love is about a week away from returning to the lineup, but is he the answer to the Cavs' problems? Next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by NBA analyst Sarah Kustok. Sarah,
good to see you, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I
being
appreciate
with
it.
us.
CC,
You
Jenna.
good?
Yeah,
I'm good.
I know you're good.
Oh,
I've been
excited
sitting
to be
next to you
here.
for the last hour. So.
Is CC
I'm
doing
good.
okay? This is who I'm most concerned with.
Oh, yeah, that's my
we
problem.
brought a basketball expert in here.
That's my problem.
Can you pass the ball?
Sharing the spotlight to my problem. That's right. That's right. Good to see you, Sarah.
Great to see you guys.
In an effort to have as many different lineups as possible and thus give us subject matter for weeks, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cavs are now 11 games back of Toronto with 15 games left to play. But here's the thing. Kevin Love has a return date, everyone. March 23rd, game against the Suns. Sarah, I'll start with you. How will Kevin Love fit with the new pieces?
That's a great question. And I think that Kevin Love will fit. It will be how do the new pieces fit in with Kevin Love. You've got a guy coming back who obviously can score for you. I'm most excited to see him thrive in that second option on the scoring side, because that's where I think he feels most comfortable. What I think is the biggest challenge is what Tyronn Lue has ahead of him with his rosters. Not so much starting, but the rotation that he plays. Does he play Kevin Love at the 5? Does he keep Larry Nance starting? Play Love at the 4? I think there's so many different options for Lue, and he doesn't have a lot of time to figure it out until they get to the playoffs. So Kevin Love, I think, will fit seamlessly. I think it helps that it's an injury that's upper body, so he's been able to work on his conditioning. But I think it's how everyone else fits around him.
And we should remind the audience that he broke his hand before the trade deadline.
Yep.
So it's not even like he got a couple games with these guys. They have never played. The last time Kevin Love was on the court, Isaiah Thomas was there with him. So it was a drastically different team.
And to me, that's why it's so different, because we saw how good Kevin Love was at the beginning of the season. The numbers he was putting up, his productivity, that dropped because his touches dropped when Isaiah Thomas came back.
Right.
So he had left with touches dropped, a toxic locker room. I mean, when he was not on the floor for this Cleveland Cavaliers team, they were an absolute mess.
And we had talked earlier in the season that Kevin Love, this was the best basketball that we had seen him play since he had come over from the Timberwolves. So for me, I think the thing, you bring up some great points as far as what the injury is, what's the status of the player. Because people talk about, well, when he comes back, how long will it take? Well, he got a hand injury, so the conditioning factor is huge. So he doesn't have to get up to speed from a cardio standpoint. He can basically get into what are the X's, what are our sets, what are our defensive sets. Where I believe it has the most impact is on Larry Nance Jr. Because for one, let's not forget, Tristan Thompson's hurt. So Larry Nance Jr., he's not only been put into the starting lineup, but don't have many minutes to replace him. So he couldn't, I mean, he got drilled by a couple centers on this West Coast trip. So he is not that type of defender that can defend these big men 32 minutes a game. So Kevin Love will be able to give him a break. But also, you can keep LeBron at the 4. I believe Kevin Love at the 5, LeBron at the 4, that's the best lineup, and let the other 3 players make their adjustment off of Kevin Love and LeBron.
And the one thing Kevin Love does have going for him is that it's not that like there's been one lineup that they've stuck to for the last couple weeks that's been successful.
No.
Ty Lue's already tinkering with all different players and all different rotations, so putting Kevin Love in is just one more different added piece.
Well, and I think people, if you didn't watch Larry Nance with the Lakers, and I think most people probably didn't, you don't know Larry Nance, the knock on him before he got to Cleveland, not a good rebounder. Yeah. He's all of a sudden in Cleveland somehow been, but it's very small sample size, been a good rebounder. But I don't know if that is sustainable. Kevin Love will help him tremendously on that. We remember Kevin Love was a guy when he was the sticking in the low post, guy get you 15 rebounds a game for a season. There's one other aspect of Kevin Love that it's a little uncomfortable to bring up, but I think it's important because what we don't know is the weight that's been removed from Kevin Love's shoulders since he spoke publicly about his panic attack, since he talked about what actually went down in the locker room when the teammates accused him of why'd you leave the game. And if we are going to see a more at peace Kevin Love, because I think with Love, it's never been a question of skill. It's always been he'd been the guy that got blamed for a lot in Cleveland, the guy who seemed at times mopey in Cleveland. And if we see Kevin Love all of a sudden mentally in a better place to go along with the fact that from an X's and O's standpoint, he now gets to be the second option without any question. Rodney Hood's not taking that from him. George Hill's not taking that from him. No question he's the second option. Are we going to see a guy who's more at peace on and off the court when he comes back from this injury?
And I think that's one of the most important points to bring up, because throughout the early part of the season, and you talked to some people from Cleveland, it wasn't just Isaiah Thomas pointing at him. It wasn't just other, like LeBron, I think, had questions. Are you, when push comes to shove, are you going to be the guy that shows up and that we expect and we need? And I think with him being able to get that off his chest, talk about his anxiety, see a therapist, as he had spoken about, I think that's a different mentality, different mindset. And I do think the biggest issue for the Cleveland Cavaliers has been their defense. Part of that is defensive rebounding. And I think Kevin makes a major impact in that top 15 in rebounding. He's top 10 in defensive rebounding percentage. So I think they still got a lot of problems to fix. But I think that's one aspect that he can help shore up.
Here's the thing with the Cavs is even when Kevin Love comes back, what he will not fix for them, what he will not play a single rotation minute for them is in the backcourt. And that has been, no matter who's been on the team, whether it was Derrick Rose, Dwayne Wade, Isaiah Thomas, George Hill now, A.Smith throughout the year, that's been their biggest weak point. They have had the least production of a shooting guard position of any of the top 25 teams in the NBA, basically anyone other than the Tankers. And they have had the least productive backcourt of any of the top 20 teams in the NBA. Maybe you see it. I don't know how Kevin Love helps that part of it.
He's got good gravity. He attracts attention. So I think on the offensive end, he will be a guy that now defenses are keying on. So the backcourt guys still need to make shots.
Yes.
But you put in another player with LeBron James on the floor that now the defense needs to key in on. I think that relieves some of the pressure from other players. And then on the defensive side, I think we see LeBron James communicating so much. Defensively, early part of the season, Cleveland was having different schemes, different coverages for every single team they played. They started to simplify things, and that was something that Tyronn Lue talked about because they said he thought that would be a better way to improve their defense. I think you got another guy in Kevin Love who understands what they're trying to do, can work better in communicating with some of these guys in the pick and roll. He has switchability at times, so I think in ways that can help aid the backcourt.
The other thing, too, watch Cleveland, watch their pace. Ever since they made this trade, they're playing at a faster pace. They get the ball off the backboard when they don't have problems rebounding, and they try to play at a quicker pace. That is the style that is better for Kevin Love, because you push the ball down the court, the bigs come down late, he's able to hit those three-pointers that are left uncontested. So offensively, he's going to help them a bunch. But is he the answer to all of Cleveland's problems? Absolutely not. They still have several other blaring problems, defensive, backcourt, that I believe will be played out as we get closer to the playoffs.
Before we move past the Cavaliers, do you still like them coming out of the East?
I may have recency bias. I just called a Toronto game a few days ago, 2 days ago. They're legit. They are the
Everyone that watches them, you saw them in
they
person,
are
so you said the same
real
thing.
deal. And I know that we're going to hear until this postseason comes about the ways in which they have not achieved.
We have a basketball expert in here. Maybe he'll start
the ways
listening.
in which they have not achieved. But to me, DeMar DeRozan is playing at a different level. That bench is impressive in the way in which they have got poise. They've got a lot of different guys that can be interchangeable parts and play in different positions. I really, really like Toronto.
I really like Toronto, and I'm very excited to see Toronto once again losing 6 to the Cavs. Very excited for it.
Sarah, we'll see you a little bit later in the show. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Coming
you,
up,
Sarah.
Tom Brady lost another familiar face. So what's next for the Patriots? Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Eric Mangini. Hey, Coach. How's it going?
Morning. Good.
What's up, Coach? Good to see you.
We doing our hand?
Yeah,
Sure.
No problem. I was waiting for you to ask.
see what happens?
Everyone
You
says he
missed
doesn't
it.
like him. I
think he
hold back
missed
for
it.
1 second, and he asks. Did you ask? Yeah, I was. It was a
We've
test.
established a routine here.
Exactly right. Y'all talking about hand sanitizer and stuff. You see, my man likes it. Thank you.
No.
No.
Following the routine.
Good to see you.
Hey, my favorite Twitter joke yesterday with regards to what the Patriots have done in free agency thus far went like this. Quarterback Tom Brady? Check. Okay, we're good. On a free agent day where most of the NFL's elite teams added pieces, the Patriots added no pieces. And if we're keeping score, they did lose some pieces. Left tackle Nate Solder, one-time starting corner Malcolm Butler, Danny Amendola, Deion Lewis, an intern in the communications department, but that's neither here nor there. Coach, which of the Patriots' losses do you think is most significant, and what does this mean for the Patriots, if anything?
Well, what I've always thought Bill did a great job of was free agency. And you know, the draft record is what it is, but what he's done in free agency has always been, to me, exceptional, and what distinguishes him from a lot of other personnel evaluators. So I'm not really that concerned about any of these losses. I'd say Nate Solder would be the most difficult to replace because it's always hard to replace a left tackle, but they have Dante Scarnecchia there, the offensive line coach, who stayed on, who's consistently developed talent. And over the course of time, you've seen the Patriots move on from big-name guys. They got Nate Solder from a draft pick that they gained from trading Richard Seymour. They moved on from Logan Mankins. They traded him to Tampa Bay. So there's been a history of them doing that. And this first week of free agency, everybody overpays for guys, and there's a frenzy. And then the next week, things calm down, and you get guys at real value, and that tends to be where New England operates.
When Coach says where Belichick's been great is free agency, people should understand that is not always who you sign. That is very often who you don't sign, who you don't match the offer to. And that's a huge part of what you're talking about here. It's not just bringing in a high-priced free agent. It is sometimes looking at Nate Solder, recognizing he's a good player. He helps us win, but he cannot account for 8% of our salary cap moving forward. You know, he's not good enough.
They can't pay him more than Tom Brady.
Okay, well, that's another great way to put it, right? Like, because 4 years, $62 million, you're talking nearly $16 million a year, $35 million guaranteed. And so that is one thing that the bad teams are terrible at evaluating. And I look at year in, year out, even with different management, what Miami does. It's like, hey, the previous management giving Ndamukong Suh $115 million. You finally get off that contract. What do you do immediately once you get off that contract? Albert Wilson, here's $24 million. Danny Amendola, here's $12 million. Like, the teams that can't help themselves but to overpay for other teams' players, and even the good teams have a hard time not overpaying for their own players, right? Not just to keep them in-house. That is one thing the Pats have been great at. With that said, like, Nate Solder is one of 2 starting left tackles Brady's ever had. It's Matt Light to Nate Solder, aside from games lost to injury. Like, that is not a position they've had a lot of turnover at. They've had a ton of turnover at running back, wide receiver, corner. We know those things. But left tackle has been 2 guys for the last 17 years.
Yeah, there is that concern. He's also had one really good offensive line coach for every year except I think it was a year or 2 that Dante was retired. But he's there, and there's real value in that, because it's not just about how the left tackle plays, it's how the left tackle plays in conjunction with everybody else. And Dante does an excellent job getting that unit to be as cohesive as possible. But with some of the other free agents that left, where did they get those guys? They picked up Amendola from the Rams. and he had kind of kicked around a little bit. Dion Lewis, they got him from Philly. They're going to find those other pieces to replace the pieces that have left.
Yeah, those pieces right there can be replaced. But a lot of respect to the coach. Scarnett kid, yeah, he is great. But, man, this is a talent-based business. This is what I'm going to tell you. When they start the season, their left tackle will not be as good as the left tackle that they've had in Nate Soldier, long as he's been there. Their left tackle will not be as good as the tackle they had before that in Light. They got that position right. The reason why I believe this hurts them more is because this is the only player that they drafted. Now, yes, I can understand the value. At some point, you got to get out. There is a get-out number. They couldn't sign him based on the way they do their salary cap, the way they rate their players, and you cannot pay someone more than Tom Brady. That's not going to fly. What Bill Belichick, he's gotten a lot of criticism for the draft. He doesn't got the draft figured out. But what he's got figured out is when you decide you're getting ready to throw away something, you got a suit you can't wear, you got a dress, you got a pair of shoes, you put it out on the curb, Bill Belichick will find that, and he will find a fit for that better than anyone in NFL history. That is what he has mastered. Besides his ability to understand the offensive game and how important it is to throw the ball and throw the ball quick, his ability to take what you cannot use and utilize it inside of the Patriot way, to me, that is the secret sauce that make the Patriots who they are. The Dion Lewises, the other players, Amendola, all these type of players that they create a role for them, that they play the best football that they've played in their career. That part right there, I believe Belichick, he can replace those other people. But you cannot get a left tackle from a scrap heap. Like, you're going to get a left tackle, but he won't be as talented. So now from a game plan standpoint, Tom Brady, I don't believe, will have the freedom to do the type of things because he's going to have to protect the left tackle a little more than that freedom that they had in the past where Solder could handle any of the top rushers that we've seen in the business without a double team. I believe that affects their overall ability to play offensive football.
Yeah, so Bill was an economics major at Wesleyan, and there's a economic almost ruthlessness with the way that he approaches free agency, and you've seen it over and over again. He establishes a walkaway number, and he walks away. Where a lot of teams, and I've been in these rooms, hey, this is our walkaway number. Oh, we can go another $1 million over. Oh, well, you don't have a walkaway number, but he's got that efficiency there where he's willing to move on, and it served them well, that discipline, allowing them to improve the rest of the team.
Coach, for the Patriot fan, and there were a number of them yesterday on social media who were just concerned that the free agent pool is dwindling and the Patriots haven't made a ton of moves. I mean, is there any concern for this team?
How long have they been fans for? Like 6 months?
5 months and 18 days, Coach.
Well, I'm just
what do you
saying,
want me to tell you?
They need to,
if they're fans of the Patriots, they should know that the Patriots are not going to participate in the beginning part of free agency. Now, last year, they did things a little bit different.
Yes, they
yeah,
did.
they went out and got Stephon Gilmore, but they need the talent. They still need talent, but they're not going to do it absent of the structure that they have, which leads them to winning.
Yeah, and each year it'll be different. And sometimes it's going to be trades. Sometimes it's going to be they've spent big on free agents here and there. Typically, it's filled with mid-round type free agents that have roles, and they do a great job of, like you said, Chris, identifying how that player fits for them. And then once they do that, usually that player excels to the point where they go and get paid somewhere else.
I want to get your thoughts on the one guy we haven't talked much about in Malcolm Butler. I think everyone expected him to be gone after what happened in the Super Bowl, but that doesn't mean he's not a good player. He played more snaps for them on defense than any player on their team. Despite that, they weren't a great secondary. Now, maybe some people would say because of that, like if you don't think Malcolm Butler's a good player, but I don't think Jonathan Batamosi is better than him. I don't think Eric Rowe's better than him. I think it's very difficult to expect a rookie you draft either at the end of the first round or sometime in the second round to be better than him next year. And the Pats don't have a great history of success drafting that specific position. What is the loss of Malcolm?
It just depends on who was there drafting him.
Okay, well, was that ever?
Well, I think it's Asante Samuel was pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. I should say a recent history. No, correct. Fair point. In the last 7 years, they haven't had a great history of drafting that position.
More sense,
okay,
yeah.
there you go. I got you.
See what's happening there?
What do you think for the loss of Malcolm Butler means for them?
I think that the second he didn't play in the Super Bowl, that was a done deal. Okay, so there's no going back. And really, they were looking to trade him in the preseason, so obviously they weren't happy with him at that point. And
they knew they couldn't re-sign him. They knew that he wasn't going to be part of their future.
And a lot of times you get corners during this time period. All these players that are signed this first week, you're paying them so much more than really what their value is.
Yes.
But it's what the market dictates.
Yep.
And next year or even early in the season when the euphoria wears off, you're like, whoa, we paid him how much? And now you get in a situation like we see where guys are getting moved on from, like in Ndamukong Suh in Miami, because it just doesn't make sense. These numbers don't make sense.
Coach, we got to take a break, but stay here. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about the Honey Badger on the other side. Can he take a contender over the top? Next on First Things First. Eric Mangini back with us on First Things First. We're talking about the Arizona Cardinals, who released former All-Pro defensive back Tyrann Mathieu yesterday after 5 seasons with the team. He's had some injury issues, but he's still just 25 years old, and now he says a winning culture matters to him more than money. What do you think, Coach? Can Mathieu be a difference maker for a Super Bowl contender this year?
Yeah, I think he can absolutely be a difference maker for a Super Bowl contender. And he's one of those guys that when he came out of college, he had some problems, and I was concerned about that. But as I saw him transition into pro football, his approach, the impact that he had on the locker room, the versatility that he had, it was a good lesson for me to make sure that I spent more time really understanding the whole person. And now at this point, I love what he's saying. I love the fact that it's not just about the money for him. It's a place where he can go and be immersed in a winning culture, where he can go and contribute in a meaningful way to a place that's all about football. That you can't ask for something better from a player of his versatility.
So who is Tyrann Mathieu? Who is the guy who used to be called the Honey Badger? He's a guy that has struggled with substance abuse for a long time. It cost him his last year at LSU. Potentially could have won the Heisman Trophy. One of the most dynamic, undersized defensive players that we've seen in college football. Did that transfer over to the NFL? There were a lot of questions as far as his size and position. We knew he would have a hard time playing corner, but Arizona did a tremendous job, and you got to give Steve Keim and Bruce Arians, because they were instrumental. Their relationship they had with them off the field. Now, they put all types of clauses in his contract that he had to walk, this very narrow line to be able to get that money. So he has proven himself as far as his character, as far as how much he loves football, and that he could gain control of his life. So this is one of the guys I'm very, very proud of in the National Football League. He plays strong safety, so he plays in the box. He's probably the smallest strong safety that we've seen in the league. But we've seen all these offenses that throw to the running backs, they throw to the tight ends, or they play 3 receivers. If he is your strong safety, you do not have to play nickel defense. You can keep him in. He can cover a tight end. He can cover any back. He can cover the 3rd receiver or the slot receiver. So it gives you this tremendous versatility. A guy who grew up as a corner, has unbelievable coverage skills. He has a mismatch playing against tight ends because of his quickness, against running backs because of his ability to be able to play in space, and he is a great tackler. There's only a few small players that are successful in the National Football League, so I believe he's a great addition not only to a locker room but to a community that he's able to sign on with. So I believe that he is a difference maker. If you're a contender, he is a guy that you want in pursuit of a championship.
So when I was first out in San Francisco, I was on the offensive side of the ball, so I was watching a ton of Arizona's defense, and the flexibility that he had in that scheme. He's also an outstanding blitzer. And when you look at a guy his size, you think of, okay, this is somebody we can take advantage of. He plays much bigger than his size. His coverage skills for a safety are much more in line with the corner, and you hear that a lot of times where people say that player, that position can do it. He can actually do it. And you can move them around, and you try to get into a slot formation and create some sort of mismatch on the safety. It's not a mismatch anymore. You get the big tight ends. It's not a mismatch. And then you got to deal with him as a blitzer. You better identify where he is because he can blow your quarterback up at any point.
So I think people might be watching and wondering, so why would the Cardinals cut him? And this was just an economic thing. Patrick Peterson's one of the highest paid corners in the league. Larry Fitzgerald has never not been one of the highest paid at his position in the league. And they just gave Sam Bradford $20 million. Like, you only have so many dollars to allocate. They also know coming up soon, David Johnson, assuming he can be healthy this year, is going to get a very big contract as well.
Economics and also scheme.
Right.
They have Wilkes. Steve Wilkes comes over from Carolina. They don't put the value on the safeties in the defense. So that value, if you're going to sign him and pay him that type of money, it's not a scheme fit for the coach. So if you're going to empower the coach, you can't allow him to sign players that he can't utilize for their scheme defensively.
But I just want to go back to something you touched on in the beginning, which is off the field, because everyone knows his story at LSU. And people talked about, I remember people discussing him as there was not a lot of empathy for Tyrann Mathieu. It was about him being an idiot and about how can you not stop smoking weed and how can you throw all this away. And people didn't know what he was dealing with. People didn't know the addiction things that were going along with some of the decisions he was making. I'm not removing his agency. I'm not saying he wasn't at fault for some of that. But I didn't feel like there was a lot of empathy for what he went through. But, Chris, one of the things you say, and we've talked about it with players in the league who, once they became pros, have had issues with drugs, is there's going to be another Chris Carter. There's going to be another guy who's on the brink, turns it around, and turns into an all-time player. I know he dealt with his issues in college, and as a pro has been totally clean. But he is a close facsimile of that. A guy who has all this talent, who it could have gone another way. A lot of people thought it was going to go another way. And now we're talking about him purely as a football player, as a great football player. And I think that story now actually helps him as a player and helps him in the locker room, given what he's overcome, some of it to his own doing, some of it not.
No, but what he's overcome is real. When he came into the league, based on the positive test in college, he's been tested 12 times a month for at least 3 years. So he has proven himself. You know, he has proven himself not only to be the guy that cares about his body, that I'm not going to use the substance, but also, man, he's been a tremendous positive thing in the Arizona community and in that locker room. Patrick Peterson took him under his wing, had him living there with him. Larry Fitzgerald took him under his wing. And I talked to Steve Keim. Man, they love this kid. They truly love him, but you can't pay them all. So every guy can't fit into their system. And now with the new coach there, I understood why they got off of him at that number.
But you don't doubt he'll end up somewhere.
Oh, heck no.
Yes, yeah.
Somewhere good. Somewhere
and look,
good.
I never coached the guy, but I loved watching him play. I loved the style that he had. And I think that really he could fit into any defense because he's got that kind of flexibility. But sometimes when you ask a guy like that to take a pay cut and you're paying a bunch of other guys, it's fair for him to take a step back and say, why am I the guy taking a haircut here?
And it's fair for him, if what he's saying is true, I'm worried about a winning culture, to look at the Cardinals and say, okay, if the option is take a pay cut or get released, where I can then pick my team, there are teams closer. Not that the Cardinals are the bottom of the league, but if you have questions about Sam Bradford, if you have questions about how much longer Larry Fitzgerald's going to play, if you have questions about David Johnson post-injury, even though I think he'll be fine, you might say, man, there are a lot of teams that would like me. There are a lot of teams that I can have a better chance to go deep into the playoffs with than Arizona in 2018.
And you have questions about the new head coach and what that system is going to mean and how long is it going to take him to get his sea legs underneath him. There's a lot of issues.
Coach, you with us tomorrow?
I am.
Awesome.
Good to see you, brother.
Thanks for knowing.
Yeah. It said it on my sheet.
You
Remind Coach he's back tomorrow.
Okay, good.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. My name is Jenna Wolf. His name is the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. That is Nick Wright. How's everybody doing today?
Good. Good day of sports yesterday.
Well, can I share this? The three of us and our lovely staff here at First Things First, we went out to watch. We went to a local brewery establishment to watch the start of the NCAA action. And just to give you an idea of how sporty these two are and how knowledgeable they are every day when they show up here at this desk, the rest of us were all watching the game, as were they. On top of that, they all had multiple games going on the phones. This one had the golf tournament on, screaming out when Tiger did something.
70-footer!
Scared all of us. 70-footer! 3 people fell off their chair. This
great.
one had previewing of every other game coming up. And I will just tell you this. It's really nice to know that even when you're not here, you're still thinking about this and this alone.
Yeah, it was a good sports day.
It was a good sports
fun.
day,
We had a good
man.
time.
It was a really good sports day. CC got to go to the Knicks game last night. There was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff to discuss today.
Yes, looking forward to it.
All right, let's get to it. We're going to start with the aforementioned golf. Remember that brief moment when we doubted Tiger Woods? That's hilarious. Tiger building on his momentum from last week. He finished the first day at the Arnold Palmer Invitational at 4 under, just 4 strokes behind the leader. He even nailed a 71-foot putt. This from the guy who's only 11 months removed from spinal fusion surgery. Literally, he had back surgery 11 months ago. CC, how impressed were you with Tiger's performance yesterday?
Well, very impressed. Very impressed that he could follow up a top 5 finish in the Valspar tournament last week, this week at Bay Hill. Now, Bay Hill is a golf course that I would say is a little bit easier than the course that they played last week in Tampa. And the reason why the driving areas are larger, the par 5s, typically you can score a lot on them. And this is one of the best tournaments as far as a field. 24 of the top 50 players are playing in this tournament. So to see Tiger at the top of this leaderboard and to continue the success that he showed, where, man, his iron play and his short game, that's the thing that impressed me the most. Following up what he did last week, shooting all those rounds under par, and then following up in the first round where Vegas made him the favorite for the tournament. He's won there 8 times, but to finish with a double bogey and still finish 4 under, it's a magnificent day for Tiger. Now it's about positioning, you know, because we see that he's able to play consistently, but also what we're seeing is, and hearing him, he's able to practice more. So now the rounds aren't taking its toll on his back, that he's able to follow up the rounds of golf with great practice. And as long as Tiger has the short game, that means chipping and putting, he's going to have the ability to win a lot of tournaments.
So Cece, you're telling me in all sports, this practice thing's pretty darn important, it would appear.
Well, I'm just going to say for the elite of the elite, practice is very, very important.
Except for Allen Iverson, but everyone else,
it's a reoccurring theme.
Well, it is a reoccurring theme, and it's so. The reason I mention it is very early in this show, I talked about how football teams, with veteran football teams, that they shouldn't have their veterans do training camp or preseason because of the risk of injury. And CC got on me then about practice, and since then it's been a theme. And it's interesting to me you say for the elite of the elite, because I think to the layperson, to the average fan, and I consider myself more than, not better than the average fan, but like this is my job, so I study it as closely as you can.
Right.
I think most people who didn't play think, well, the elite of the elite are the ones that need practice the least. And what you're saying with Tiger, the ability to fine-tune, the ability to practice consistently, something he couldn't do pre-back, not just back surgery, but the back fusion, the lower back fusion, that's been a difference for him. Now, I also want people to know, because I know yesterday was a March Madness day, and the early part of this tournament was only available via online stream. You couldn't watch it live. So when you heard Jenna say, oh, so Tiger's 4 shots off the lead, so that's good, but you also got to keep in mind Tiger's, when he went to the clubhouse at 4 under, the leader was at 5 under. Those really big scores of 8 under and 7 under only got posted later in the day. Conditions got a little better for scoring.
Great point.
And so his 4 under could have been what it was at the time, the second best score that had been posted in the tournament. I also want to mention this. And we showed it in the highlight package, the very first few clips. His approach on 6 and then putt on 7, keep in mind he did the back 9 first. So it was his 15th, his 16th and 17th holes of the day. That approach is perfect. That approach they just show there, it's such a hard shot because you have to clear the bunker. And then, yes, there's some luck to this. Whenever you hit a 70-footer, there is some good fortune to it. If he didn't make it, it was probably going to race 7 or 8 feet past the hole. But to do that on back-to-back holes, right after the double bogey.
Yes.
Right after, and keep in mind, the double bogey he thought was unfair. It was an odd ruling. The ball got tangled in a man-made, I guess all fences are man-made, but a fence that is not typically there.
A temporary fence.
Temporary, that's the word, thank you, as opposed to the God-made fences that are just lining
You
golf
know
courses. A temporary fence, he thought maybe he could have gotten relief. They didn't give it to him. That cost him those 2 shots. And when that happened, you said to me, we're sitting there watching the tournaments, but you said to me, man, those big numbers are tough to overcome. To then answer that and respond with the next 3 holes he did was brilliant by him.
Let's take this back even further. We mentioned he's 11 months removed from having back surgery. He's only really 6 months removed from hitting balls again. So now he had a few tournaments where he's starting to build on this momentum. Is it just possible that maybe we are, I don't know, getting a little too ahead of ourselves with what we expect from Tiger Woods? I know you're anti-Vegas the last couple of days, but Vegas right now has him the favorites to win the Masters. So I feel like and he even said this in his post-game press conference. He said, guys, let's all keep in mind, like, I just really started playing again, so don't really expect too much. I'm just out here having a good time. Are we sort of putting that, not that we're putting pressure on him, but we're anointing him to a place where he's not quite ready yet?
Yeah, I'm going to let everyone else temper their enthusiasm. Nick and I, we all in on Tiger Woods. Like, we don't mess around. Like,
I don't care if I'm wrong. I just want to watch this.
This is the thing.
Yes.
And in talking with his agent, I've been very, very fortunate that I've been able to walk the golf course with Tiger's team. And, man, they didn't know if he would ever play again. And now for us to see one of the guys who's been a hero to us, to see him back playing, I mean, Tiger Woods we know Jack is the greatest golfer, but Tiger is the greatest athlete to play golf. And he has brought so many other people to the game. I know how good he is. And also, I know in the 6 months that he's only been swinging the club, but his short game, his chipping and putting, that was the only thing that he could do when he did have the injury. Now, this is an injury that we have never seen. We have never seen. It's not back surgery. He's had back surgery 4 times. There's no one on the PGA Tour in the history of the great tour that's had a fused lower back. So what we're seeing, yes, no one had ever seen it before. Yes, typically logic is to temper your expectations. But for me, I know how great Tiger is at golf, and I know there's such an intimidating factor with Tiger being on the course. I believe, I told you, in the next 4 weeks, from last week, I thought that he would win a tournament. Tiger Woods is he makes the sport different. He makes us as broadcasters and what the content that we can put out there totally different. And I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm about a great story. And this is a guy who potentially was on pursuit to be the greatest golfer ever, who was laid up and potentially couldn't play the game again. No, I believe that my enthusiasm is matched by what Tiger and the expectations that I believe are realistic.
And for me, because CeCe's a good golfer. CeCe's been to the Masters. CeCe loves golf absent of Tiger. That is not me. I remember being with my, rest in peace, with my grandfather when I was 11 years old, running up to his room and saying, there's this kid. They say he's going to be amazing. It was when he won his 3rd amateur. And saying he knew who he was because he was such a golf fan. And for me, that moment is when golf started to exist. And you know when golf stopped existing for me? That night before Thanksgiving 9 years ago. When I didn't know it at the time, but when we lost Tiger Woods for a long time. There was the 1 year since then he won Player of the Year but didn't win any majors. Like, this for me is a sport coming back into existence that's been dormant. That's been what do bears do in the winter? When they go hibernating. Thank you. Yes. That's been hibernating for the last few years. And one nerdy golf note that should be mentioned. You said before this tournament that for Tiger, if it's a par 72 with 4 par 5s, for Tiger, that needs to be a par 68. What was so impressive about the Valspar is he wasn't elite on the par 5s, yet he still finished in 2nd place. Yesterday, he finishes with 4 under. He finishes at 4 under. There are 4 par 5s. He was 4 under on those 4 par 5s, even the rest of the other 14 holes. So he took advantage of those opportunities. He was a lead around the green. He led the field in strokes gained around the green. If he can get his driver and his 3-wood to stop going sideways.
Yes, just to be average.
Just to be average accuracy off the tee with his driver or 3-wood, he is back to being the single most dangerous golfer on tour. And for me, it's exhilarating.
Well said.
Very much. All right, we'll take a break here. Coming up, Richard Sherman has some choice words for Pete Carroll, his former coach. Hear it from him next on First Things First. Yep. Hey everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright, and welcome to spring, everyone. Today is day one, and we know that because tomorrow there's supposed to be snow once again in the Northeast.
Stacey, I jinxed us a little bit on the weather in New York. We were walking. It was a few days before Thanksgiving. I was like, you know what? Winter might just miss New York this year. I was wrong. Just came
So you
a little late.
had a take that didn't quite land?
Didn't quite pan out. Didn't quite pan out. Not quite what I expected in mid-March.
But you're dressed the part. I'm dressed the part. You're dressed the part.
All of us.
Good
First
to go.
day of spring.
Yep. Anything you want to add to the as our Doppler
let's
weather
get to
guy?
the sports.
Fun fact, LeBron James has been alive for 12,133 days. Of those days, he's been the best basketball player in the league, just under 12,133 days. Here's proof. Last night, in what could have been a trap game against a hungry Bucks team, he scored 40 points, grabbed 12 boards, dished 10 assists, and caused 4 in-game tweets from Nick Wright. Cavs beat the Bucks in a game where Kevin Love returned and added 18 points. Chris Carter, you wanted to dive in. We'll start with you. How impressed were you with LeBron last night?
More impressed than the weather in New York City. LeBron, it's just an ongoing thing. How impressed? I can't say I was even more impressed last night because this is where he's at. Like, this is what I expect to see from him. When they traded Kyrie Irving, and with all the injuries, and then the second trade before the trade deadline, this is what LeBron's got to do. Now, I'm more surprised that his body has been able to hold up, that he's been consistent the way he has been the last 30 days. So I wouldn't say I'm impressed with LeBron. It's been it's been a continuum of what we've been talking about. His overall ability to be able to play at this level, at this age, it's astonishing. But it just didn't happen because of last night. Last night was just, they got another player back in Kevin Love, which is able to spread the court, which makes it a lot easier for LeBron. But he's starting to find what he needs to do with this team. This is not a very talented team. They are not going to win unless LeBron plays like this. It's almost like when LeBron was in the finals with the Cavs.
In 07.
Or any of the finals with the Cavs.
Oh, okay.
Like, they will not win unless he plays this way. And in some of those cases, they didn't win anyway against Golden State. But this is how LeBron has to play for them to be able to win. I would say if I'm impressed by something, I'm impressed by the way he's taken the initiative offensively. LeBron is a pass-first ball player. He's probably, of the greatest players in the world all time, he's probably the most unselfish, him and Magic Johnson, of those two. So it's not his natural thing to say, I'm going to score. And sometimes I have a problem with that because he doesn't have the productivity there. He needs to score, and sometimes he defers to the other players. So I'm more impressed with his ability offensively to take the initiative. I'm not impressed with his rebounding, not impressed with his assists, because this is what LeBron has done. But his overall scoring and taking that initiative, I think is very, very important for him. And I believe that's helped elevate his game to a new level.
The reason yesterday was a particularly special performance in this stretch of unbelievable basketball by LeBron James. In February, he averaged a triple-double for the first time in his career for a month. This month, he is a couple assists away from averaging a triple-double. He's averaging 9.2 assists per game for this month, so he might do it in consecutive months. We saw how great he was in his last game out. The reason this one stands out is the circumstances surrounding it. You mentioned Kevin Love coming back. Kevin Love got injured before the trade deadline. So Kevin Love never played a game with George Hill, never played a game with Jordan Clarkson, never played a game with those two guys that played big minutes yesterday. Obviously, Rodney Hood and Larry Nance, the other guys they acquired, are out injured. But also the news yesterday about Ty Lue. The news yesterday where the head coach of the Cavs is going to take a leave of absence dealing with illness. And then also the opponent, a team they are likely to play in the first, I shouldn't say likely, but possible they play in the first round of the playoffs. Right now, the Bucks are the 7th seed, but easily could become the 6th seed. So it's who you're playing, it's the circumstances of the day, and it's the overwhelming performance. The third oldest player ever to have a 40-point triple-double. No player has ever had a 40-point triple-double this deep into their career, games-wise. It was the way he did take over the game whenever the Bucks made a mini run to come back towards them. LeBron, to me, it appeared, said, okay, all right, we're going to get this thing back up to 8, back up to 12. And this ended up being, it was a 17-point game with a couple minutes left before the Bucks made a run that was essentially meaningless. Like, to be playing at this level in year 15 when we are seeing around the league younger players, I should say around the league, but on his team and the Warriors, younger players who are dealing with 3 straight finals, much less 7 straight finals, either deal with mental or physical
even if
injury.
you exclude Golden State, this year in the NBA, there's been more games missed by the players than any game in recent history. So it speaks to, forget Golden State, the rest of the NBA, we've seen more guys get hurt than typically. Almost kind of a mirror of what we saw in the NFL this season when we saw all the injuries all the time. Now, not the catastrophic injuries in the NBA, but games missed are very, very important, and it helps tell part of the story where LeBron is right. The reason why I'm not impressed, when a guy averages a triple-double for a month, then he has another triple-double, been like, well, how are you impressed? Well, I just watched a month of triple-double. So I'm not trying to downplay what he did, but it's what I'm seeing almost every night except the 40 points. I thought that was really special.
So we all talk about how what you do in the regular season is one thing. Every team is going to have to step it up a gear in the postseason, no matter what, offensively or defensively. Does LeBron have another gear in him from what we're seeing?
This is the gear.
Is this the gear? This is what we're going to have to see. So this is the best the Cavs are playing right now?
Well, Rodney Hood's out injured. They don't have their first string or second string center. Obviously, they're just now getting Kevin Love back into the lineup. He came back a week early, which was good news for them. That kind of got buried early in the day yesterday with the Ty Lue news. But will LeBron play better than 29, 11, and 10 on 55% from the field and 42% from 3? That's what he's done since February 1. No, I don't think he'll play much better. I don't know if it's possible to play much better than that. But I think what is, to me, so impressive is LeBron had to engage the playoff mode early, and it doesn't seem to be wearing him down at all. Despite not missing a game, despite for the second straight year he's going to lead the NBA in minutes, he is able to just sustain this at a super high level continuously. And CeCe, you pointed out this article yesterday about a Navy SEAL he's worked with when LeBron was dealing with back issues a few years ago, and one of the reasons that's extended his prime to a level we've never seen a guy in year 15 do these types of things. You said the rebounds and assists don't impress you because you're used to it. He is now averaging a career high in rebounds and a career high in assists in year 15. We are running out of ways to say the word unprecedented because all of this is terrain we've never traversed before in the NBA.
Okay, so then let's just talk about Kevin Love coming back to the lineup. How much does he do, and how much did you see last night? And how much more confidence do you have in this team now that he's back?
I'm not going to say I have confidence in the team. This team can't win with absent of talent. Any NBA team, you add an all-star to the team's going to instantly get better. But when you talk about inside help, Tristan Thompson being out, Nance being banged up and injured, when you don't have another big man, so this was necessary. So when you don't have a big man, let alone an all-star big man, then also spacing on the court. You still have another knockdown shooter. In the 22 games Kevin Love missed, the offensive productivity, LeBron did not get help. As a team, they went 12 and 10, but 8 times he got the productivity of 20 points from a teammate. Now, that's why you want Kevin Love back in. Productivity. The guy is an all-star. All-stars aren't just walking down the street. So Cleveland, absent of Kevin Love, I mean, LeBron's all they have, and they have no chance of winning the championship without Kevin Love.
And what I was most pleased about yesterday outside of LeBron was not just Kevin Love, but the fact that the Cavs found a way not only to win this game, but to score 124 points once again with no production from their starting guards. Korver was okay. George Hill was a 0, a literal 0 in the points category, and that is a storyline to watch. Because
now we're going to watch George Hill.
Well,
have not been warning you about George Hill?
The George Hill storyline to watch as far as what are you going to get from him in the postseason? Are you going to have to revert to LeBron essentially playing point guard and playing without a point guard? Because if you do that, you are shortening your available rotation from 8 or 9 guys to 6 or 7 guys. That is something you have to watch right now, particularly if the Cavs were to make the NBA Finals, where they're going up against either Steph Curry or James Harden. At least I believe you feel like you're going up against either Steph Curry or James Harden at point guard. Because at this point, Any production from J.R. Smith is a bonus. Like, I can't count on J.R. Rodney Hood, once again, has been the bugaboo for his career, nagging minor injuries. Nance, nagging injury this year, and now George Hill with nothing. Those are the 3 of the 4 guys you got in that trade, and Clarkson, to me, is a couple years away from where you could trust him in the playoffs. So that is something to watch as far as this team's ability, not necessarily to make the championship round, but to be able to compete in that championship round.
Here's some we haven't seen in a while. Carson Wentz throwing a football. Yesterday, video surfaced of Wentz breaking his sweat. And you know what I always say, nothing says I'm ready to come back from a torn ACL than a 12-second blurry video on Instagram. Reports are he's still targeting week 1 as a comeback date. CC, should Wentz change his playing style to avoid future injuries?
No, for what? Like, guys get hurt in the league. Tom Brady got hurt in the pocket. Do people tell him to change? No. Carson Wentz is not a scrambler. He is a pocket passer, a guy who's very, very athletic. At the combine, guy ran 4.7. Guy at 6'4", 230 pounds. No, he should do exactly what he's doing. You can't avoid that type of contact at the goal line. And that play that he actually got hurt on, it was unavoidable. There was nothing he could do. There's nothing he tried to split the defenders at the goal line. He couldn't have went up. He couldn't have went down low. Like, this is the price of doing business in the National Football League. So, no, I don't expect him. I expect him to actually get better. Of course, when people ask the question, because, yeah, they don't have nothing better to do. But other guys get hurt. What about Deshaun Watson? He got hurt.
Deshaun got hurt. Deshaun got hurt in practice. This is Wentz. Wentz was.
But he does run with the football.
He does run with the football. But Wentz was 3rd most in the NFL on designed runs per game as a quarterback, was 5th most on scrambles per game. So he does run more than every quarterback in the league, but 3 or 4 guys.
As a rookie, Carson Wentz had 150 yards rushing. He had 46 attempts. Now, you can't run that offense, the read option, without the quarterback on occasion keeping the ball. That's what makes the offense very effective, because you have a 3-way threat. That's what makes the offense really special. You put the ball in the running back's pouch. You let him fake it. The quarterback pulls it up. Throwing is one of the options, and running is one of the options. So, no, I don't believe that.
Well, CC, you mentioned his rookie at 150 yards, but last year he had 300 on 64 rushes. Like, so they don't. You wouldn't, if you were coaching him, you wouldn't adjust it at all, given the injury he suffered?
They actually expanded the playbook, and they had him running more last year. No, I wouldn't, because it's not going to help him from getting hurt. He's not Randall Cunningham. He's not RG3. Well, I need him to play fast. And when you're playing fast is when you're not thinking about things. Now, he doesn't put himself in harm's way. He doesn't run reckless. He knows how to slide. In watching the games, all right, it's different than taking someone's opinion on a guy getting hurt. When you watch Carson Wentz play, you don't think, wow, this guy's careless with the ball. Wow, this guy's going to have a short career. No, I don't think that. So for me, when you come back from an injury, number one thing you want to do is have your confidence back. So I wouldn't be putting that restriction on him immediately, because I've watched him play. I don't think he plays reckless, and I think his overall athletic ability is what attributes to how good he is as a player.
Just quickly, do you think maybe not design plays, but he'd be more apt to sort of hold on to the ball than to go out and run it outside the pocket, knowing what happened to him last season? I mean, as an athlete that comes off an injury like this, are you more protective of that injury?
No. I mean, he tore his ACL. There's no way you can protect your ACL. They're going to put a brace on it.
You could limit the amount of scrambling you do.
This is the thing. He's going to be in the pocket anyway. You can tear your ACL in the pocket. You could tear it like Deshaun did, or other players have done. You know, to me, I know what it does to a player's psyche, all right? And a player can't play fast if he's thinking too much. And Carson Wentz is not a reckless guy. So, no, I wouldn't change him.
So then explain this part to me, because I look at I remember the 5th show we ever did, the Monday after the first weekend of the NFL season, because we had watched those games together. And this was before anyone knew Carson Wentz was going to be an MVP candidate in year 2. And I remember saying, listen, I had been agnostic on Carson Wentz going into year 2. I didn't know if I thought he was going to be really good, really bad in the middle. And what impressed me most about him was the plays he made that were off script, where he did avoid the rush.
Yeah, because most people didn't see Carson Wentz in college. Carson Wentz ran the ball a hell of a lot in college, and people don't realize how athletic he is. If you look at Carson Wentz, Google his combine and Cam Newton's combine. You watch their measurables, height, weight, speed, power, explosion, they are almost exactly the same. Carson Wentz, Andrew Luck, and Cam Newton, they're all the same, even though they all look different. So that's the kind of athlete that we have playing quarterback for Philadelphia.
But the distinction between Carson, Cam, and Luck is Cam and Luck, neither of them have lost a season due to a knee injury running the ball. Like
if anyone would have gotten hit that way, they would have gotten hurt. Cam Newton would have gotten hurt if he gets hit that way.
So then explain to me, because this is where either something I don't understand or something that I'm missing. Explain to me the difference between Wentz and why he wouldn't change his style and the mobile quarterbacks that we have heard repeatedly told you have to change your style.
Who told them to change?
What
players are we talking about?
Any of the guys that run around a lot.
Who are they?
The RG3 has to change the style.
He had a slight body. He was undersized, and he was a 4'3" guy. Those guys don't last in the NFL. Michael Vick was an anomaly. He made it through. Who else made it through? Randall Cunningham changed his style. Who else made it through just scrambling?
I feel like
Steve Young, he changed to a pocket passer.
I feel right. Well, okay, so there you go. Hold on. So you're saying change to a pocket passer because
he didn't get hurt. He stopped because their system. He stopped running the ball as much and became a pocket passer.
So why are we not saying that about Wentz is my question. A guy that was top 4 in the league and rushes as a quarterback.
Because he's not playing a style that I believe is taken away from his ability. Steve Young was not a great passer. He concentrated on his passing so that he could be a great passer. There's a big difference between the two.
So you look at Wentz's injury just a freak accident, essentially. Nothing that his play style is.
I wouldn't call it freak. I would call it playing football.
Right, but it's not the way you don't look at that injury the way we look at injuries suffered by guys that run around a lot at the quarterback position, where we say, well, that's why you can't do that in the NFL. You look at that's not how you view what happened to Carson Wentz.
No, because he doesn't play that way. He's not reckless with the football, and they don't call unnecessary runs for him. I think it's a great balance for what they're trying to do. When you don't have the option of the quarterback running the ball, that's the reason why the offense sputtered with Nick Foles. Because the reason why they run that type of offense is to put the threat into the defense that the quarterback can run. Now, just because he hurt his ACL in a collision where he got snapped between two guys, which all 32 quarterbacks would have gotten hurt right there. So, no, I'm not going to change the style.
I don't think anyone's doubting that all 32 quarterbacks would get hurt right there. I think the question is at least the question.
So if all 32 guys are in this situation.
No. Hold on. There's a difference. All 32 guys would have gotten hurt on that play. The question is, how many of the other quarterbacks would have tried to make that play? Right? The question is, how many of the other quarterbacks would have tried to make that play at the goal line as opposed to throwing it out the back of the end zone?
So now we're going to tell players in the NFL, if you have the chance to make the play, I don't want you to make the play. What do you want him to do?
Well, I don't know.
If you go back and watch that play with Carson Wentz, what was he supposed to do?
I don't know what he was supposed to do. But I feel like we tell guys when Andrew Luck.
I don't.
You mentioned Luck. Hasn't some of the commentary on Luck been he has to be smarter about the hits he takes?
We just say that because we're tired of talking about the offensive line. If they put a competent offensive line in front of him, Andrew Luck wouldn't have gotten hit like that. But because the offensive line talk is not sexy, let's tell Andrew to speed up his clock a little bit. But that's mismanagement from Indianapolis, the players they've drafted, the players they put in front of him, and the overall lack of running game. How many games has Andrew Luck had a 100-yard rusher?
I don't know.
Not a whole bunch.
We should also mention the Eagles they signed Michael Bennett. Michael Bennett's very excited. They should be happy Carson Wentz is up and throwing again. So we're going to talk a little bit about more what this means. The Eagles coming up a little bit later. But up next, the Texans added a big piece. But could they actually be contenders in the AFC? Next on First Things First. Sam Darnold's pro day is set for Wednesday. Rain expected in the area, but Darnold said he'll throw regardless. He's such a trooper. CC, you expect weather to impact Darnold's pro day at all?
No. Plus, he has no choice. When you don't throw at the combine and your pro day is scheduled, that's the last day NFL teams can see you work out. When you go for your team visit, each team can bring in 30 prospects. You don't get to work out on those days. You get to see the facilities, meet with the people, but the rain won't affect them. But, interesting question. High school seniors out there, why doesn't USC have an indoor facility? With all the $1 million alumni they got, all the pro ball players.
That's exactly what
I had an indoor facility when I was at Ohio State in '84. Now, they need to get with the times.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Why? But why don't they? Is it just because it's sunny and no rain in LA 360
No, they don't have
days
the
a year?
facilities. Their facilities overall are subpar. They just upgraded them. They just had a huge campaign to upgrade them, but they're one of the teams there's a powerhouse that they don't have the facilities. So they lose recruits based on things just like that.
Wow. I didn't realize they didn't have an indoor facility until this story came out yesterday. Like, you're going to have to throw in the rain. Why can't you go inside? No inside, I guess.
Line of the day. No inside, I guess.
Yeah, no inside.
Double overtime action in the NBA last night. The Heat beat the Nuggets 149-141. Seems like a random game. Nick, why is this such a big deal for the Nuggets?
Nuggets going to miss the playoffs, man. And when they miss the playoffs, they're going to look back to this game. They are now 2 losses behind the Timberwolves for the 8 seed, 1 loss behind the Clippers for the 9 seed, and the 9 seed doesn't even get you in. Their defense has been an abomination. Jokic is an extraordinary offensive player, but he gets abused on the defensive end night after night after night. To lose to a shorthanded Heat team in a game you have to have, and a game that doesn't really mean that much to Miami. Miami's locked into the playoffs. They're going to be the 7 or the 8 seed. Like, to lose this game when you have a chance to win it at the end of regulation, and then at the end of overtime, and then at the end of double, you can't have it. So when they miss the playoffs by a game, they're going to look back to last night.
That Western Conference, we knew someone would be left without a chair. Who's it going to be? Potentially the Denver Nuggets, but it could have been any of those teams. The Pelicans, the Timberwolves, Utah. All those teams, it's a sad story, but I think that Denver is the least talented of those teams in the West.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the Cavs. Kevin Love made his debut after being sidelined for nearly 2 months with a hand injury. Came back, scored 18 points. He had 7 rebounds in a win over Milwaukee. Cece, what'd you think of Kevin Love last night? How did he look in his return?
I really enjoyed it. Kevin Love's a guy that's really into fitness, too, so it was nice to see him on the court. His body looked in good shape. We know only through his revealing it that he dealt with some anxiety things, but for me it was good to see his smile on the face, him going into the locker room. Seemed like he had a little bounce in his step. I like Kevin Love as a basketball player. I know people there in Cleveland really like him as a person. So anytime you add an all-star, they got the rebound advantage last night. Wow, they didn't get killed in points in the paint last night. A lot of that is because of Kevin Love and him coming back.
And that's all those points in the paint rebounding stats are despite no Tristan Thompson, no Larry Nance. The threes he hit were big threes as well. People have probably seen the one that was from about 30 feet out, but it felt to me every time Milwaukee was making a run, either LeBron scored 4 in a row or Kevin Love hit a big 3. He also seems to be having fun. We couldn't play the clip because it's so hard to see, but it's going viral on the internet. At one point, he gets knocked down on a three-pointer and does like a backstroke up the court, laying down for reasons someone needs to ask him about. I don't quite understand it. Love had a good time.
Happy.
And it was his first game with the new-look Cavs. They looked pretty good.
Finally, the Sixers beat the Hornets 108-94. Ben Simmons had a triple-double, including 15 assists, no turnovers. Simmons became just the 3rd NBA rookie to do that. Nick, how dangerous can the Sixers be if they get to the playoffs? Well, in the playoffs.
Yeah, in the playoffs, they can be a problem in the first or second round for most teams. Because what they have right now is Ben Simmons, who, yes, he's a rookie. When you see 15 assists, 0 turnovers, no rookie's done that in 20 years.
Amazing.
And it's only been done twice in the last 35 years by a rookie. He's an odd rookie because he had the redshirt year. And now he's 70 games into year 2. So he's obviously not a veteran, but he's not going to be stunned by the bright lights of the postseason. So you have that at point guard, a 6'10" point guard. You then have Embiid, who is a matchup problem for every team in the league. Every team in the league, aside from some teams that aren't going to make the playoffs, like the Clippers. Yeah, you know what? You could put DeAndre Jordan up against him and see what you can do. The Pistons, you could put Andre Drummond up against him, see what you can do. Well, those teams aren't in the playoffs. When you look at who Embiid could be going up against in the first or second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, that is going to be a matchup nightmare for whomever they draw. Now, Philly could go as low as they are right now, the 6th seed. They also theoretically could jump all the way to the 3 seed. They have 30 losses. The Cavs at 3 seed. They have 29 losses. So we don't know what that matchup will be, but nobody wants to draw Philly in the first round. I promise you that.
I know Philly don't want to draw Cleveland in the first round either, because you talk about Ben Simmons as a point guard, point forward. he'd have to guard LeBron James.
Correct.
They have no answer for LeBron James. So right now, as we stand, Cleveland 3, them at 6, Cleveland's going to give them the business in the first round. Now, yes, they are promising. He did have 15 assists, no turnovers. Yes, but playing LeBron in their first playoff experience, this would be a quick trip to the playoffs for the 76ers.
But let me ask you something separate. If the Cavs either fall to the 4 line or if they don't draw the Cavs in the first round, let me put it like that rather than go through the different machinations. If they draw Washington in the first round, I think the Philly would be a favorite over
Depends
Washington.
if John Wall comes back. Is he totally out because of John Wall? Because I believe they can give Philly problems, too, at the point guard. All right? They would have a problem with John Wall and the pace. The one thing I want to watch in the playoffs, I know you've talked about Joel Embiid and the mismatch. What I'm concerned about is NBA refereeing. They do not give the big man the benefit of the doubt. If you're on the perimeter, you cannot touch a guy. In the paint, they allow you to hammer, push, and everything. I don't know if he can dominate a game with the playoff style. I don't think they're going to let him dominate the game. Based on the way the refs call the game, he's going to get fouled not quite as often as other perimeter players. So in that, it slows down the offense. The ball doesn't stop moving because right now, they don't isolate him on the box a lot. So if he was to play against Kevin Love, how's he going to dominate the game with the style for which the referees don't call it? And that's not a style that Philly does not say, get on the box.
No, they want to
We're going to throw it in you 20 times. If that was their style, I would be more concerned. But they kind of play into the opposition's hands by allowing him to play out on the perimeter, which for Kevin Love or Tristan Thompson, that would be to their benefit.
That's a good point. All right, let's go back to some football. Don't look now, but the Houston Texans could be pretty good next year. They signed former Cardinals defensive back Tyrann Mathieu yesterday to a 1-year, $7 million deal. Okay, now you can look. He joins a defense that features J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, and Whitney Merciless. Mathieu says he's excited for the opportunity.
Well, I just want to prove my point that I'm, one of the best safeties in this league. Obviously, I had some setbacks. I had some challenges, and, I try to, take those challenges head on. I just want to come to a group where guys were hungry. Obviously, I'm very hungry at this point in my career. I wanted to come to a team that had great potential, a team that was dominant on defense, and I think I made the right choice.
All right, CC, if the Texans are all healthy, how big of a contender are they?
Oh, absolutely. They're in the mix. I mean, if you talk about the AFC South, Jacksonville dominated that division last year. We got Luck that was out in Indianapolis. We got Frank Wright going to be his coach. I expect Luck to be back and for them to be back in the playoff picture. Tennessee made it as a wild card team, losing in New England. So to think Houston is not as good as Indianapolis or better and Nashville, absolutely they are. So we know that. He made the right decision because he went to a team that can rush the quarterback. All right? I don't care if guys are hungry. If you don't have no guys rushing the quarterback, the Honey Badger's not going to be best suited in that situation. Their offense, if they can stay on the field and have some type of ball control, we know Deshaun's going to come back, and they're going to be prolific throwing the ball. Will Fuller, Nuke Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins there, they have one of the most explosive offenses if they're able to find a running game. So, to me, I like this signing. What if they add a guy like Adrian Peterson late? He's from outside of Houston.
Where he wants to go.
If they can get him for cheap, add him to that roster. Houston is a team that I believe for the first time in Bill O'Brien's tenure there, that they can reach their potential. They can get after the quarterback. Jadeveon Clowney, in the last year of his contract, they're going to have to sign him to a monster contract coming off his most impressive year so far. So, yes, Honey Badger, I thought, made a great decision going to Houston.
When you look at the Texans, we don't talk about the Texans a ton, but I'll mention a team we talk about a lot. The Dallas Cowboys, they're like the opposite of them. The Cowboys have this awesome offensive line and this great running game with weaknesses on other spots of the ball. Don't have dynamic receivers. Don't have defensive players who are like, oh, my God, what are you going to do? The Texans have all those things the Cowboys don't with one of the least accomplished offensive lines in football. And as of now, if we're talking about bringing in Adrian Peterson, that gives you an idea that, it's Alfred Blue and Lamar Miller. And Lamar Miller right now, he's playing on a big running back contract, but he has not matched his production that he had in Miami. They have real questions up front on offense. But man, oh man, this defense, the key word is healthy. If healthy, is terrifying. People forget they lost Whitney Merciless last year as well. He only played 5 games with a torn pectoral. He was a double-digit sack guy. He led the nation in sacks coming out of the University of Illinois. Clowney is one of the best two-way D linemen in football as far as tackles for loss and quarterback pressures. He's been a much better run defender than I thought he would be. And then there's J.J. Watt, who, when healthy, is Defensive Player of the Year.
But the when healthy is not in small fonts.
No. I mean, J.J.'s played 8 games in the last 2 seasons.
No, he need to change his style.
I don't know what he can do. Like, because if you look at J.J.'s 2 separate injuries, like the reason he lost the year 2 years ago, he had back surgery. Then last year, I looked it up, tibial plateau fracture. So that means the top of his shin bone, where it connects to the joint, that's what broke. Those are 2 major injuries. And where a guy who had been an Ironman, had played every game of his career or every season of his career without missing a game, to only play 8 of the last 32, it's a big but, without even mentioning their starting quarterback has now torn an ACL in both knees, coming off the left ACL tear in college at Clemson and now the right ACL tear at practice as a pro last year.
If healthy, do you put this defense up with the Jaguars, Vikings, Eagles? I mean, some of those caliber defenses.
Their secondary is not as good. Their front is good. Their linebackers aren't as good either as Minnesota's linebackers. Minnesota's got better linebackers in a good secondary. Jacksonville has decent linebackers, very, very fast, good in run and pass situations, and an extremely impressive secondary, especially their corners. So there's a little difference in how those teams match up with Houston.
The Texans spent their free agent money this offseason on that secondary. They added Aaron Colvin to compete, probably to take the spot of Jonathan Joseph, who has been playing forever in this league. And then they also added Tyrann Mathieu. Now, by the way, Matthew's another guy that we have to put if healthy. The reason he's available for only $7 million a year, I believe, is because of the concerns about his health. Because when he's out there and playing, he's, to me, a dominant, multi-purpose guy that can cover you in the nickel, that can play safety. He can do everything you want your safety to do. If Tyrann stays healthy, to you, does that raise the secondary up a notch? Because it does to me.
Of course, with the multiple offenses, not being able to guard the tight end and the running back, yeah, he's the best strong safety that they have. His versatility and what it brings to the defense. Also, let's not forget, he's one of the best blitzers from a secondary position that we have in the league. So you have all that heat that they can bring with Clowney, Merciless, J.J. Watt, and then now you got a guy that can come off that nickel slot and be able to put pressure on the quarterback. I think it's exciting things for the Houston Texans.
There's a lot of question marks with all those injuries. Either they're going to be super healthy,
or how you change your style as a defensive player. As a defensive player, it's a little different. What are you going to do? Call
Dusty, you hear that?
Or they're going to be, I have a joke. Or they're going to be the Warriors.
And we'll get to it next time, Jen.
Yeah, because that's what we're going to talk about. Are the Warriors rushing back Steph Curry too soon? It would have worked really well if the whole sentence was one sentence as opposed to 8 fragmented ones. That's next on First Things First. Here on First Things First, we are now joined by former NBA All-Star and champion Antoine Walker.
Nice to see you, Antoine.
Hey, Antoine, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, did you hear about the Warriors? Because they're suffering from a bad case of, I don't know, everyone got hurt. Steph, Clay, KD did not play last night, and Draymond didn't play the second half in a loss to the Spurs. Warriors are reportedly targeting Friday for Steph Curry's return from ankle injury. He's tweaked that ankle multiple times this season. So, Antoine, with all these injury concerns, you still think, or do you think the Warriors are better than the Houston Rockets heading into the postseason?
No, I don't think they're better than the Houston Rockets. And there's a number of reasons why I think that. I think, one, Houston is doing something that we haven't seen in the last 4 years that Golden State. They're going to make them play on the road. Game 5 and 7, important games. We haven't seen it. And also, Houston roster's gotten a lot better. The best roster Golden State can put on the floor is with Draymond Green at center. Houston can play five small guards now with P.J. Tucker, Trevor Ariza, Bunawute. They got some small guys now. They can play 5 guys with Draymond Green at the center, with him at the center spot to match up. And then also, you got to like the fact that they got another playmaker in Chris Paul. You know, it takes a lot of pressure off James Harden when you got Chris Paul who's having an exceptional year who can create too. So I like where Houston's at right now. I believe if they get home court advantage, they can actually beat Golden State.
And they got it now. The home court is over. I mean, Draymond after the game said we're locked into the 2 seed. So, I mean, Houston's going to be the 1 seed.
I want to go back to a person you mentioned because I think that we talk about him, but maybe not in depth. Chris Paul. Like, who is Chris Paul? And what are we going to see that's going to be able to allow this Houston team to be able to get over the hump? As a former NBA champion, as a guy that Chris Paul looks like one of those glue guys. What is it about Chris Paul that you believe is a tangible thing that gives them an edge?
Well, knock on wood, hopefully he stays healthy. He doesn't get hurt over these next couple of weeks. If he goes in healthy, he should have a chip on his shoulder. He's yet to play in the Western Conference Finals. He's yet to play in the NBA Finals. So he should be motivated. He should take this challenge on personal. This is the best team he's played on. So I look at that situation. And then he's having a great year. I mean, his three-point shooting has been incredible this year. I've never seen him shoot the basketball like he shot it this year. He should have been an all-star, but he wasn't. He missed so many games early in the season. So I just think he's got a chip on his shoulder and he's ready to go.
There's one other aspect of them having Chris Paul that in the matchup against the Warriors is so critical. Who's Steph guarding now? Like that is the thing. Like when the Rockets and Warriors have played in the past in the playoffs, Steph doesn't have to guard James Harden. Clay guards James Harden, and Steph guards Eric Gordon's a good player, and he guards Eric Gordon, or he guards Patrick Beverly, who is not an offensive threat. You can hide Steph on the non-offensive guard you could have in the past and not have to worry about him being a liability on defense. If you have Chris Paul and James Harden, which they do, as they're starting backcourt, Steph got to guard somebody. You can't put him on a 3, obviously. They'll just back him down. So who is Steph going to guard? Because my guess is he'll guard CP3. That's not a good matchup for him.
He probably start off, but I think they're going to hide him. I think he's going to guard Trevor Ariza. And I know this doesn't sound like the most likable matchup.
No.
But Trevor Ariza is a guy that's going to spot up in the corner on the offensive end for threes. I think they're going to try to hide him. I don't think you can – Houston, you can't just change your identity and just try to feature Trevor Ariza in the post. So you're going to continue to put him out there. But I think they're going to hide him.
So if they put Steph on Trevor Ariza, do you then think Clay would guard CP3 and Durant would guard Harden? Like, because I'm just curious, in that situation, I'm trying to think in my head.
Let's go to the best lineup Golden State can have.
Oh, with Iggy out there? Okay,
with
sure.
Andre Iguodala. So let's think about that's the lineup that's going to play. That's going to play the bulk of the minutes. So that's where you're going to see us. He can hide him in that lineup. Because I'm looking at that's the only way you can beat Golden State. You got to be able to play against their small unit with Draymond Green at the 5. That's where they've been the most successful over the last 4 years, is him at the 5 position.
There's one other way to beat Golden State, and that's if none of these 4 guys come back. So do the Warriors need all 4 of their stars in this lineup to win a title, do you think?
Oh, without
no
question.
doubt. Yes.
The West is totally different. You know what's kind of crazy? I mean, neither one of these teams, but Oklahoma City, don't end up playing them in the playoffs. Oklahoma City is going to be a tough out.
Yeah, they trending right at the right time.
I don't like anybody else in the West to put pressure on them, but OKC. When you got 3 dynamic players like that can play and they can score the basketball in the playoff series where you shorten the rotation, I like OKC against one of these teams to take them at least a deep series, like 6 or 7 games.
So you think if they were to, you think Oklahoma City in the second round is a tougher out for one of these teams than Portland?
Yeah. I'm interested to see the game tonight. Obviously, you got Portland playing Houston tonight. Both teams on winning streaks. Portland's won 13 in a row, so it'll be interesting to see how that matchup goes. But Portland still lacks they don't have a 3-man. You know, they got a great center, they got a great backcourt, but when you get to the 3 and 4 position, they struggle in that position. So when you get into a playoff series, I don't think they can beat Houston or Golden State. But OKC, Mark, remember I tell you this, OKC is going to be in the mix.
You mentioned at the very beginning that Golden State is going to have to go on the road for games 5 and 7. They're also going to have to go on the road. I always focus on the beginning of the series because what we've never seen is Golden State having to start a series in a hostile environment. I'm trying to think, in the last 3 years, have they started a series? I think only the Memphis series where they lost game 1. The Memphis series, I know they were down 2-1 in that series, but typically they start at home, they get out, you know what I mean? They're up in the series, and you're chasing them throughout. How much does starting the series on the road, if anything, matter to you?
It means a lot. I mean, you can go down 0-2 is tough. I was in the finals down 0-2, but luckily the format was different. The format was 2-3-2.
Yes.
So it's different now. So you go down 0-2, and they never faced that type of pressure. You got to put Golden State in pressure that they never faced before in order to take them out their comfort zone. They've had the easy road for the last couple of years where they've controlled everything. Now they got some injuries. They got to try to get guys back in shape. You don't know how long these guys are going to be out. This is going to be a tough road, tough championship for them to get this year.
Are you worried about them? Or you worried that these guys aren't going to be ready when the postseason starts?
Yeah, without question, because you hurt. And you obviously now you don't have no practice time. You're not going to practice right now.
Right.
So everything is going to be little bike work, walkthroughs, just getting shots up. And you're not going to, and the intensity goes to another level come playoff time.
When KD comes back, if you're playing against a guy who you know is coming back from a rib injury, how does that, is it a little extra bumping? What do you do as a player if the guy you're checking,
Well,
just
Nick,
came off a rib
I played
injury?
in a different era.
The
So
real NBA.
My era, we're going to put pressure on him. We're going to bump him and do all
He'll
those
donkey
things.
kick that.
But now I think, Kevin's tough. I mean, he's not been a guy that's been injury prone throughout his career. Obviously, he had his foot injury, but he's played. He'll be tough and be ready for that. But I think, obviously, you got to put pressure on him. You got to be physical with him. You got to try to take him off his spots. But I don't think he's going to see that to the second round, and obviously, if they get to the Western Conference Finals.
All right, Antoine, stick around. We got more coming up. How does LeBron James keep getting even better in year 115? That's next on First Things First. Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer, Chris Carter. That is Nick Wright. And on the second day of spring, we are just moments away from a Jagunda nor'easter here in New York City.
Giant snowstorm coming.
Come on.
But CC, a giant snowstorm's coming. CC did some Hall of Fame hands pre-show. I don't quite know why, but there was some. If people knew what it took to get this football to sit perfectly the way it is right now without moving, that was done at the last possible second.
Rule changes, so we changed the desk a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Got a little Barkley, maybe New York blue, maybe coming to New York, little headlines from the days, and then the football.
I like
to
it.
get it started.
I like it. Absolutely right.
Crazy things happening here.
Yes.
Crazy things. We bounced a football and put a newspaper on the desk. What are we going to do tomorrow?
Jenna's got curls in her hair.
Stand by. But I
Yes.
don't have a pen is what I don't have. There you go.
Yeah, you do.
What a team. All right, let's start the show. Two of the hottest teams in the history of the universe, also the NBA this season. They both faced off last night. It's the Blazers, winners of 13 in a row, and the Rockets, winners of 22 of their last 23. One of the lesser-known rules in the NBA, guys, game can't end in a tie. This one went to the Rockets, thanks in large part to James Harden and his 42 points. Rockets now own a 4-game lead in the Western Conference. Chris Carter, I'll start with you with all that balancing. How will you answer this? Is it time to consider the Houston Rockets the favorites to win the NBA title?
Well, I think many have looked at this, and we started the conversation before Golden State got injured. Will Golden State, how important is the #1 seed? And then we start seeing Steph got hurt. And then we're like, how important is it to have Steph back? So now it's kind of evolved to, Golden State, are they as good as Houston with guys being injured? Well, now let's get down to it. Well, who is the favorite? The team that's played the best, typically, they would be the favorite. That's not the case. In the Eastern Conference, we've seen Toronto. They've dominated the East. They've improved their team, their overall bench, but people aren't going to give them credit for it. Now, in the West, because Houston, they've changed their roster, and they've changed the style for which they play. Does this style match up more with Golden State? I would say yes. Are we going to give them credit for how they've played for 6 months? Like, at some point, we have to give them credit. Yes, this is the best team in the NBA, but are they the favorite? They're not the favorite because the champ, you still got to knock the champ out. The champ has all the experience. The champ, we should rightfully, because they're NBA champs. Houston is the best team. Are they the favorite? I don't think they should be the favorite until we see Golden State either not healthy, Golden State gets down in a series. I can understand, but I'm giving Houston credit for how good they've been. But being a champion, being a multiple champion that Golden State is, given that all their players are going to be back, I would say just to play on the word, yes, I'm much respect to Houston. But Golden State is still the champ, and until Houston knocks them out, that's what I'm going to say. Golden State should still be the favorite as long as they go into the playoffs healthy.
What's the difference then, Nick, between the best team in the NBA and the favorite team in the NBA?
Well, I understand CC's distinction, which is right now the Rockets have played the best. Right now the Rockets are the healthiest, so right now they're the best team. But that doesn't mean if right now, if all things were equal, if they played each other, CC would pick the Rockets to beat the Warriors. So that's his distinction, that the Warriors are still, in his eyes, the favorite
because
over
of
Houston.
the championship pedigree.
Because of the championship pedigree.
All the things that they've been through, we need to consider that compared to, are we just going to look at what's happened in this basketball
and that's
season.
Full Warriors strength, full Houston strength, not where they are right now. Okay.
Yes.
And so I understand that distinction, and I think that is a fair distinction to draw. I do not think the best team has to be always the favorite. I think a great example is the East. Toronto clearly has been the best team in the East this year. I will never believe they're the favorite to win the East till they got 3 wins in a series and they're up with a few seconds left on the Cavs. So I understand that distinction. I no longer think that distinction applies to the Western Conference. I think Houston is the best team, and I think as we sit here on the second day of spring, March 21st, I believe the Houston Rockets are the favorite to win the NBA championship. I think we have a sample size of nearly a full season. We have a sample size of exactly a half season of Harden, Paul, Capella playing. 41 games they've played together. They're 39-2. We have seen Houston play the next 8 teams in the West. So 7 of those teams will make the playoffs. But teams 2 through 9 in the West this year, they are 21-3. And if we are going to go to historically, the Rockets almost assuredly this year will win at least 65 games. They need to go 8-3 or better down the stretch to get to 65 wins. Why do I point out 65 wins? 65 wins have happened 20 times in NBA history. 15 of those times, that team has won the championship. So we are getting to historical markers with this basketball team. We already talked about how their offense, right now it dropped a tick, so it's no longer the greatest offense in NBA history. It's like the second greatest offense in NBA history. But the 3 in the other top 4 all won a championship. We are talking about historical regular season greatness from a team that, even if I remove the historical lens, I just look at it as a basketball fan in 2018. The one thing I cannot find with the Rockets is what they're missing, aside from something they can't grab right now, which is experience, championship pedigree. The one thing they're missing, they're ineligible to get during the regular season.
Said.
So let's just look at this guy up here, because there have been moments where we've considered James Harden a phenomenal player, but slightly maybe underrated because he hasn't fully been able to prove himself in the postseason. Based on everything you've watched in the regular season, what he's been able to do, how he's been able to work with Chris Paul when people were wondering how these two would work together this season, do you still think is a bit underrated?
No, he can't be underrated. I mean, if you watch the games and you see what Harden is doing, he's the best offensive player in the NBA. And I believe that the players that they have around him, and I talk about this quite often, styles, team styles, and James Harden. James Harden, he's got more versatility to his game and his teammates that he's playing with. You have to give them so much respect. And the way D'Antoni has the offense and the way they close out games, the way they do the pick and roll just to get the mismatch compared to trying to pick and actually roll old school basketball. Like, they pick and roll to get a matchup to make guys switch, Jenna, to get Harden on anyone he wants on the court. And they have the shooters to build a space to court. He breaks down that defender better than anyone right now in the NBA. So Harden, man, you have to give Harden respect.
The only reason James Harden won't be, and pardon me, the only reason James Harden won't be the unanimous MVP this year, which has only been done once, Steph did it, LeBron was a vote away from doing it a few years ago, is because some people don't like his style. Some people don't like the herky-jerky, slow motion.
His ability to draw fouls on people. It's a style, too, that's unorthodox. And most of the great players, they don't have that.
Isn't that a skill or is that a style?
No. It's an enormous skill. I'm just saying.
Develop.
You got 120 people that are going to vote for this award. There are 4 or 5 of them, I believe, that don't like watching Harden play. So they're like, I'm going to vote for Anthony Davis.
Aesthetically?
Aesthetically. Just simply don't like. But Harden is clearly going to win the MVP this year. And now we've got a 4-year sample of Harden's play, where I do think it's fair to ask, is he underrated nationally? Most people believe the hierarchy goes like this. LeBron 1, KD 2, Steph 3, and then a scrum for that next spot. Harden, Anthony Davis, Kawhi when he's healthy. Some people love Russ. The shine's come off him a little bit this year. But the last 4 years, Harden's gone second, ninth, and now first in MVP voting. I'm assigning that to him. I think show Harden. Let me do one of those blind reveals. That's Harden versus someone over the last 4 years. That's not this year. 4 years cumulative. Harden's beating him in points, trailing slightly in rebounds, beating him soundly in assists, nearly identical PERs. That's over a 4-year sample. Show me who that guy is. The guy everyone says is the second best player in the world.
That's interesting.
James Harden has as good of an argument as Steph, as good of an argument as Durant, that he is the second best player in the world.
So why do we talk about Durant in a totally different class than we do James Harden?
I think we've liked Durant. Durant has less holes in his game than Harden had up to this point.
Up to this point.
The way I think also the pieces for which he's playing with, I think that we had Durant and Harden very, very close to each other until we saw Durant last season in the postseason against LeBron and with the Warriors and being the MVP. I think that was kind of one of the stamps of approval the public gave to Kevin Durant. Harden hadn't had that moment. Nick, to your point, as far as his unorthodox style and people not liking that style, there's also people that don't like Durant's style. They don't like LeBron's style because he complains. Harden complains. But, man, for me to stay up, for the hours that we're working, for me to stay up and watch them play last night, I'm going to tell you, you got to be a special ball player. And that's where Harden is right now. It's a developed style that also has been cultivated by the offensive system that they have in Houston and the players that they have put around him. It is time for James Harden to shine. He has never played better with his teammates, and that style has never been developed where he can take advantage of NBA defenses, more so than any point I've seen in James's career.
And the other reason that he has been considered a tier beneath Durant, other than the defense, which, by the way, that obviously wasn't shown on that graphic. Durant is a better defensive player, and we have to be fair on that, is because prior to this year, Harden had never been the best player on a team that you credibly thought could win the championship. Durant had been the best player on a number of teams that you credibly thought, whether it was in Oklahoma City or Golden State, you credibly thought could win the championship. But I want to quote Daryl Morey on one thing. He said this on a panel I moderated at the Sloan Analytics Conference. And when he said it, the crowd kind of drew back. But I've been thinking about it. He said, in James Harden, we have the best isolation player in NBA history. Now, when you start saying best in NBA history, you start thinking, okay, let's think about how Kobe was in isolation. Jordan didn't do a ton of isolation because of the offense they're running. Like you're thinking about it. But then you watch the Rockets at the end of games. How do they close out games? ISO James Harden.
Yes.
ISO, and how's it worked out for them, at least thus far this year? It's worked out to where they're pacing to win 66 games.
The only guy I would compare him to, and it's hard to compare him because one's a post player, my man Isaiah Thomas says, Kareem.
Oh, okay.
If you say that ISO is throwing it into the post, which is a little bit different.
A little different.
He's the only guy you can, I think, actually compare him to.
And you have to think that the narrative changes a little bit if James Harden does go ahead and win the title. Then we start talking.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Then you start talking about him historically among shooting guards. Him versus Dwayne Wade. Him versus It changes.
What is the headline on the paper, CeCe?
Lose clues.
Yes, Barkley.
Lose clues. We're talking about Saquon Barkley coming up next. All right, new topic to the NFL draft. Penn State held their pro day yesterday, but running back Saquon Barkley did not take part in the Penn State pro day yesterday. No NFL running back coaches showed up, so Saquon decided not to participate. Many are wondering if he's the best player in the draft. Don't worry, he isn't wondering that. He knows. Here he is, talking with Kim Jones.
Do you think you're the best player in this draft?
Yes, ma'am.
No doubt.
Yes, ma'am.
You're going ma'am on me, so I know you're serious. But top pick, top 2 picks, top 5 picks, I mean, do you set a goal?
No. The mindset I have that it don't matter where you draft me. I can tell you you're going to get a guy that's going to come in and it's going to work. That's how I got here, and that's the only thing I know. I can't promise you Rookie of the Year. I can't promise you 2,000 yards, but I can promise you that I'm going to come in and you're going to get a leader. You're going to get guys who's a competitor who's passionate about the game, and the rest is going to take care of itself.
What a well-spoken young man he is at this
Mature beyond his years, it appears.
He really is, and he's not even out of college. All right, CeCe, how confident are you that Saquon Barkley is, call it a can't-miss NFL star?
Well, ma'am, there's not a lot of can't miss.
Don't even think about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There's not a lot of.
I may be only a few years younger than you, but I am still younger.
I got you. That's the way my mom raised me. But good question, ma'am.
It's not
can't
landing
miss.
well.
It's really hard to put on a prospect coming into the league. But as far as a guy who I believe has the perfect transition skills, and let alone, forget his maturity. Like, I'm not even going to get to that part. Just his pure football skills, as a runner, running between the tackles, as an elusive runner, being able to score from anywhere on the field, as a pass receiver, coming from college football and be able to catch the football, not a special teams player, an elite special teams player, dangerous. If you kick the ball to him on a kickoff, as we watch Ohio State, the first play of the game, man, he takes it back to the house. So he's proven himself in a league that running backs, being the Big Ten, they transfer over to the NFL as good as any conference that we've seen. We see what they have in Dallas, in Zeke, what they have in Pittsburgh. These are two of the 4 best running backs in the league, all-purpose-wise. They came from the Big Ten. So you can look at his stats, what he did in the Big Ten, how he played, and I see that transfers over. His overall attitude and loving football. He doesn't care where he's drafted. Yes, he should think he's the best player in the draft because he's proven that, being consistent at the college level. And from talking to the coaching staff there, they say he's even a better person. He's a great leader in the locker room. He holds all the records from weightlifting, sprinting, all those things that people deem to be important. He's got them, and he's got them in spades. So I'm looking forward to his transition to the National Football League because I believe forget a can't-miss prospect. I believe he is a bright star in a league that needs more stars like him.
Before I answer the question, I want to ask you one question because you every time we've talked about Saquon, you've talked about a part of his game that you focus on more than anyone that I hear talk about this player, and some people just ignore it entirely, which is the special teams component, which is how he can impact the game, not when your offense is on the field, but in the special teams component. He's going to be a top 5 pick somewhere. You would be comfortable, and tell me why you'd be comfortable using him in the special teams game, because we typically don't see guys that teams consider their A-plus assets in the special teams game. You'd be comfortable with Saquon there. How come?
Because he's special. He's special when he gets the ball in space. And if you're going to give me 3 or 4 more opportunities, given the rules in the NFL, the way they have moved the kicking game back, seeing that he's proven, he makes people miss. He doesn't get hit hard a lot. Leonard Fournette, you saw him in college football. He got hit hard a lot in his rookie year. He struggled with some nagging injuries. But when you don't have a guy who's going to get hit an awful lot, he's not going to get solid contact. They're not going to, because he's elusive like that. You utilize him because on the first day, there's no play you have to call. It's kick the ball off. He catches it. They run some type of scheme to be able to get him. And I believe it's an instant impact to the NFL right now.
So as far as I don't know that it's ever fair to call a player can't miss in this regard. I remember the Oakland Raiders, and this is going to be a name no one has thought of in 15 years. But the Raiders, they were going to finally be smart in the draft. They weren't going to take the fastest guy. They weren't going to take the flashiest guy. They were going to take the safest, can't-miss prospect. His name was Robert Gallery, a number 2 overall pick at left tackle. Now, he ended up having a long career, and he's transitioned to right tackle. It was fine. But we thought he was the safest can't-miss guy, and he, of course, never became the franchise guy. So there's never 100%, but is he the closest thing that we have in this draft as to a guy that I am confident will be a Pro Bowl player in this league? Absolutely. Of course, always barring injury. He is a guy, because of the position that he plays, that I think his transition will be the easiest, and I think he can make the most instant impact. And one last point, compared to some of these other star running backs we've seen coming out, I think he is least reliant on a great offensive line because of how he can help you. You said in the special teams game, but also catching the football.
Yes.
We saw the difference between Leonard Fournette, good, bad offensive line, or Todd Gurley's a better example, good, bad offensive line. I don't think he will be as much of a victim to his circumstances as some of those other players.
He's also the safe bet from a process of elimination. You could poke holes in all the top 3 or 4 or 5 quarterbacks that you have going right now, that no one is like this sure bet fire thing. No one has poked a ton of holes in Saquon Barkley's game up to this point. All right, coming up, changes are coming to the catch rule. CC knows nothing about that, so we will not ask him one thing about it.
This hurt me. This hurt me.
Oh, I'm so happy.
The bar is up to here.
Man, this hurts.
All right, to the NFL now. Ndamukong Suh is set to continue his free agent tour. He visited with the Rams yesterday. He'll visit with the Raiders today. Raiders is an interesting choice for him. CC, would Suh be a good fit in Oakland?
Ooh, Man, I think that if you look at veteran players, for me, veteran players have always gone to the Raiders and kind of been able to live up to that skull and crossbones type of image. I think with John Gruden, you need a couple dirty guys. You need some guys going to cause a little chaos, and I believe John Gruden and Ndamukong Suh can be one of those guys. Now you got to put him on a tight leash because he will stomp a dude's face. Right. He will stomp you on Thanksgiving. So, yes, when you are the Raiders, you do need some edge players. Edge meaning on the fringe of the rules, and Ndamukong Suh is definitely one of those players.
Man, when we heard he was getting cut by the Dolphins, I said I thought the Rams would be the best fit for him. He visited one yesterday. We'll see what he does. But I said that before the Rams traded for Marcus Peters, signed Aqib Talib. You got Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, and Ndamukong Suh in a locker room. That might be a little too much for my man Wade Phillips to handle.
Yeah,
so
I don't know who the team chaplain is there, but they're going to be busy.
And they're going to need someone to pray for them.
Right.
For the
no
team
doubt.
chaplain.
Yes.
So the Raiders, listen, you guys know I'm not bullish on some of the moves John Gruden has made. I happen to think Suh has a little more left than a lot of people do. I think Suh, if it's less than $8 million a year, that's about the threshold I would put it at, could be a good value for the right team. So we'll see where he ends up.
All right, to the draft now. Former UCLA
I think that's less
quarterback
money he made at Nebraska.
Josh Rosen worked out for the Browns and the Giants on Tuesday. Browns have the top pick, Giants second pick in the draft. Total coincidence that he worked out for him. Nick, any chance Rosen is taken top 2 in the draft?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think Cleveland's going to take him. At this point, I would say Sam Darnold is a favorite versus the rest of the field to go number 1. The question is, would the Giants take him? Or would a team give the Giants an enormous package of picks to get up to number 2 so they can take him? I think that is absolutely in play, that Josh Rosen is the second pick of the draft. You know that if I were running the Giants, I would take him number 2. I, unfortunately, am not running the Giants, though, so I cannot guarantee
Right, and not because I don't like them, but I follow the guys that follow the draft, and this is the quarterback that we've least talked about going to Cleveland. We talked about Josh Allen. We talked about Sam Darnold. And I don't think it helped him, his comments during the season, as far as playing in Cleveland. Now, it's disputed, did he say it, and did he come back and correct it? But I believe that they're going to take the safest quarterback, and I believe that's Sam Darnold at the number 1.
And finally, the NFL says they're considering changing pass interference from a spot-on-foul penalty to a 15-yard penalty. CC, does the pass interference rule need adjusting?
The pass interference penalty right now, in the way the league has governed, the way the rules have changed, if you look at all the rule changes in the last 15 to 20 years, it's been to the benefit of the offense. Very seldom have they adjusted the defensive rules to be able to help. But, man, you're talking about something that drives fans crazy, pull their hair out, is just a little ticky-tack, a judgment pass interference call where, man, the team goes from being backed up to now they're at midfield, or they're at midfield and now they're in scoring territory. To also, when you get penalized inside the end zone, that goes right to the 1-yard line. There's nothing more penal in the game than the pass interference. I believe that it should be adjusted a lot like college football because we throw the ball more. The chances of pass have it happening are a lot more prevalent, and it changes the course of games. I don't think teams will just start having 15-yard penalties if they do change the rule. So it's one of them kind of things that will we much rather have the big hit down the field, or do we think guys will start grabbing more because it's less penal? I don't think guys will do that because 15 yards, that's a personal foul. When you see 15-yard penalties, typically the offensive team is going to score some points. So I would like to see an adjustment to be able to help out the defense.
I would like to see an adjustment, but not the exact adjustment they're talking about. Because you know, I love the spectacular play. And I am afraid that if you make it to where it's just a 15-yard penalty, that what you're going to have is guys, when they get beat for potentially a touchdown, just tackle the guy and take the penalty. Do you of course, remember when the face mask, there used to be 2 versions of it.
Yep.
A 5-yard minor face mask and a 15-yard personal foul face mask. I would like to see the NFL do that with pass interference. 15 and spot. Have it be a spot foul for truly egregious pass interference penalties, ones where it's clearly intentional, you've been beaten, you're trying to prevent the touchdown that the guy should have, and a 15-yarder for more of the judgment call ones. And there is a bit of a fringe benefit to that. I'd like to take everyone back to the final play of this NFL season. The Hail Mary, Remember what Malcolm Jenkins did on that Hail Mary? He knew they were not going to call pass interference. So he just wiped out, I think it was Gronk on the play, he just wipes him out.
No, he wiped out one of the other receivers. Gronk was able to get back into the play and almost make the play.
Right, but
he
whomever,
blindsided
whomever it was.
Hogan, yes.
Knowing there was not going to be a call.
Knowing they're not going to call a spot foul, final play of the Super Bowl, pass interference. But, and we see that on Hail Marys a lot, that guys are like, they're not going to call spot foul in the end zone. If there was the ability to have it be a 15-yard foul, then maybe you wouldn't be able to do that. And maybe the guys would be a little more cautious in those individual situations. I know people don't love the referees having more judgment calls, but I think this might be a happy medium. Have the 15-yard variety and the spot foul variety. That's something I would like to see if the NFL would potentially consider. So that would be my solution.
Why don't you just call Roger? You have so many great ideas. I mean, we have to hear them all. Why doesn't he?
I got other rule tweaks you want to know. By the way, illegal contact shouldn't be an automatic first down. Just 5 yards, do it again. No 3rd and 13.
Every once in a while, I take some of the one or two of his little concepts and take them into the meeting.
He called them little concepts.
Yeah, he did. That's fine.
Nick has spent years developing these. Years. Little concepts. Another potential rule change after a season full of controversial catches and non-catches. The NFL is, in fact, making changes. NFL Vice President Troy Vincent says the committee plans to change parts of the rule when it comes to going to the ground, as well as to slight movement of the ball within the receiver's hands. CeCe, what's your reaction to these changes?
Well, I could say I initially was not very, very happy about it, but in search of, and I had to listen to Roger and a bunch of other people that Roger Goodell. I had to listen to him and other people on the committee, and they did have a tremendous influence on changing my overall view of them potentially changing the rule. And the reason why was because it wasn't like they just wanted to change the rule. They just really want to make the game better for fans. All right? They believe that the pros will adjust. When they change the illegal contact rule or targeting rule, the players have adjusted to that. And the new rule, if the fans want it, if it's going to be more entertaining, and the way they went about it. They looked at all the plays, and we've done this several times. So I've been fortunate enough to be on the committee that decides this. But when they looked at it, they went backwards compared to us looking at 50 plays and saying, is this a catch? Is this not a catch? It was more of, would you like this to be a catch?
And how can we adjust the rules to make this a catch?
Right. Should this be a catch in the game? Would the fans want this to be a catch? So very seldom do you ever see rule changes where they're trying to help the fan and help the product that the fan is seeing on the field. And the catch, no catch rule, it's not about the players. It's really about the fans and their judgment of it, and Roger being a fan of football. So trying to make it more simple, because as you can see, this ball is in my hand, but I still have control of it. So now once a guy catches the ball, because of their skill level, can this ball still move and them still have possession of it? And that is yes. I can understand that. And we have to build and embrace technology. When you have all the different angles and all the replays, you know that's going to come in play. So if we have the judgment this ball moves anything, any little bit, that it's not going to be a catch, you're going to be taking away a lot of spectacular plays that guys are making, taking away value from the game that the fans. The other part of it is going to the ground.
That's the part I want you to explain to the audience.
I mean, that part's going to be eliminated. They're going to make it simpler, so that part you don't have to worry about. So
how do you make it simpler?
It doesn't have to qualify as a catch, them surviving the ground. Okay. If they've had the other two elements, being control and time, being time and 2 feet or one body part, then it would be a catch. That part, as far as surviving the ground, would be eliminated from it.
Let me let the audience know, as it is written currently, pre-change, if you are going to the ground, the catch process essentially has to start totally anew once you hit the ground. Like, that's what happened with Jesse James. It wasn't that he went to the ground. It was that once he goes to the ground, it doesn't matter that he had what I would have called possession pre-going to the ground. It was he got possession while going to the ground, so none of that's possession. He now hits the ground, doesn't have possession. It's a wrap for him. If in that play, once he hits the ground, the ball never comes loose and he rolls over, that would have been a catch.
Yes.
He survives the ground and then rolls over. The Des Bryant play, similarly, he's going to the ground. To your eye, it looks like he has possession, but by the way the rule is written, you can't.
By the letter of the rule.
You cannot legally, according to the rule the way it is written now, or the way it was written as of last night. We'll see how they change it. You cannot actually have possession until you have gone to the ground fully and then made your football move.
So would that Jesse James catch have been ruled a catch?
Yes, that would have been a catch.
Under the new, the way we're going to change it.
Exactly right.
Yes.
Because they're going to the ground, and same with the Des Bryant play.
Sure.
Because he clearly had control of the football,
Right.
but he didn't survive the ground.
Right. And the way the rule was written, neither one of those should have been catches. But when you look back to the game and the way they did it, and Troy Vincent leading up that group there with football operations at the NFL office, do we want these plays in the game? Do we want Des Bryant to catch that ball? We do. Do we want Jesse James to catch that ball? No, we do. So in changing the rule, those plays would be added to so fans, I think fans overall. But listen, pump your brakes a little bit. We're going to go through a growing period.
Yes.
Because our eyes
That's
got
what
to
I was gonna
adjust
say. Right.
to the game. And, you know, unless there's indisputable evidence, you're not going to be able to go to replay either.
Well,
so
that is going to be the forgotten part of what Troy said yesterday. And that is the part that I personally like the most, which is they are going to try to re-emphasize to officials what your call on the field is the written gospel, barring something
Call
obvious.
it with conviction.
Call it with conviction, and if upon replay it is glaringly obvious you got it wrong, then change it.
But what do you mean if it is obvious on replay? Do they have to go to replay?
No. So
How
the
are
way
they seeing
what
the
was
replay?
happening this year, I felt very often, was there was a play was called on the field, a catch. And then by your 7th replay in super slow-mo from a 3rd angle, you see, oh, there may have been a bobble.
It gets challenged. It gets challenged by the coaches.
Challenged, or if it's on a scoring play.
Right, but the refs aren't doing that. The coaches are doing that.
No. What the refs were doing, in my eyes, was almost looking for reasons to overturn it.
Oh, okay.
And what Troy said yesterday is, we are going to go
back to the old standard,
which is the call on the field. You need, remember, incontrovertible video evidence. The most important word there is incontrovertible. No, if the call on the field was a catch or, by the way, an incompletion, if we are going to switch it, we need it to be clear to everyone. What we can't have is a call switched that people are then arguing about.
Right.
We can have a call stand that people say, it should have been overturned. What we can't have is that you maybe got it right on the field, use replay to get it wrong. Because that, as a fan, you're talking about the fans.
Yes.
There's nothing more frustrating as a fan watching a game than feeling like replay screwed me.
Right.
Like the refs got it right, and now technology, now it's different if replay, okay, the refs clearly got it wrong. Replay helped them get it right, even if that goes against you.
Just quickly, this is now the second time we're having a rule change, right? A couple years ago, they tweaked the catch rule just a little bit. Are you happy with where we're going now? Is this something that could stand in the NFL? No, Nick's laughing.
He's accepting of it. Cece's done a good job of accepting this.
Right. There's been I love this game. And I think that when you make adjustments to make the game better for the people watching the game, it's not going to hurt the history of the game. It's not going to hurt how the game is played. No, it's only going to enhance fans. We're trying to get people to fall in love with football, not fall out of love with football. We shouldn't have 4 or 5 calls every Monday and the fans don't know what they're watching. All right? They spend their hard-earned money to watch this game. They should know the product. They should be able to sit there and be like, that's a catch. That's not a catch. All right? And so I think that will keep the NFL one of the most popular sports, acquiescing to the fan, and they've done a good job. Raj, you know.
Very nicely said. Big R, right? Hey, coming up, how do the Celtics keep winning without Kyrie Irving in the lineup? Next on First Things First.